JJ Conway, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. It is Juneteenth, which now is a national holiday. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to see how that's going to play out. And I know that if I was still in the military, a lot of the peers, I can just imagine some of the comments that my peers might have had. But I think it's important, just like we remember the Holocaust and just like we remember other things that aren't so savory. I think it's important to remember some of the things that our nation has done and own up to those things that have been done so that we can ensure that they won't happen again. And so I'm super excited to share with you guys today some Juneteenth content. Now, let me talk a little bit about what we're going to do, because many of you who are familiar with me and my body of work, you might remember that today is our third Saturday of the month. And every third Saturday, we do something called Building Wealth Together. We do a morning at 8 o'clock on entrepreneurship, different forms of entrepreneurship, because we want everybody to create additional streams of income so that they can have financial flexibility, financial independence, and then financial freedom. Right. And then after that, we go into real estate investing. So 8 o'clock Central is the entrepreneurship class. 9 o'clock Central is the real estate investing class. And when I looked at the schedule for today, I said, hey, our third Thursday is Juneteenth. So we are going to do something special today. So again, some of you have been taking my real estate investing and entrepreneurship classes for 7 years now, and you're used to the schedule. We start off a certain way and we work our way through the content every year to help people change their lives and develop those extra streams of income. But what I've done is I've switched a few things around for this year because I wanted to align it with Juneteenth. And we'll figure out next year how to make sure it always aligns with this weekend, now that we've got it in our mind. And be on the lookout because we have something very special being planned for next year. But today we're going to talk about a couple of things. Today, instead of teaching you how to finally write that book, or instead of teaching you how to make free money through Amazon, or how to teach you, how to determine what business is the best fit for you, and what is one of our future classes, I think what today was supposed to be is why your business feels like a job instead of a business and what to do about it, right? Like, instead of those types of classes, today what we're going to do, because it is Juneteenth, is we're going to talk about empowering generational wealth. And there are so many different ways to build wealth in this country, especially, and so I do want to talk a little bit about that. If you hear me clicking in the background, it's because I had a blurb that I wanted to say and sound real professional about Juneteenth. And in my haste to get everything started, I accidentally closed it. So I was trying to get it back and I see that it's not. So we're just going to talk a little bit about it. And, if I get it in time, I'll get it great. But if not, then we're just going to go through it. But the thing is, what I wanted to really cover today is something that will unlock our wealth building. See, in this country, there are a lot of ways that people can build wealth that you can't build wealth in other countries. And I know because I've lived in other countries. And so even while today is a reflection on Juneteenth and the actual real ending of slavery here in the United States, we want to look forward to the future. And so for those of you who don't know what Juneteenth is, Juneteenth commemorates the day when the last of the slaves were officially notified that they were free. Now, you might be surprised to know that it took 2.5 years for word to spread to certain parts of Texas. And that isn't because never mind, we're not going to go there, but we're just going to say that everybody has vested interest in keeping things the way they want to keep them, and if you're in power, you get more of an opportunity to keep things in the way you want to keep them. And in this particular case, it was very advantageous to those in power to make sure that the slaves didn't know that they were freed. There's a quote that's often attributed to Harriet Tubman. I couldn't actually find that she actually said it, but it's often attributed to her, which is that, I freed 1,000 slaves and I could have freed 1 million more if they had realized that they were slaves, right? Well, with the whole thing about Juneteenth, you had a whole state full of people who did not know that according to federal law, they had been set free. Because, it's Texas, and Texas is going to do things the way it's going to do things. And so I'm very, very thankful. And it's funny because even people who know that Juneteenth commemorates that day. That was the day that they all found out, hey, we're free. Some of us were goodly adults before we even realized it was 2.5 years. Like I thought growing up, or not growing up, because we actually didn't hear about this growing up. I heard about it after graduating from college. That's a whole nother discussion. And that's part of why I'm so glad it's a holiday now, right? But I heard about it after graduating from college, and I thought it was 6 months. And in my mind, it's kind of like, oh, okay, 6 months. That's not really that bad. I mean, word travels. They didn't have cell phones back then. Okay, I get it. The 2.5 years. Yeah. I lost my black card in that discussion because I didn't know. I thought it was 6 months. I didn't know it was actually 2.5 years. Okay. So anywho, today we're going to talk about generational wealth building. And then we're going to talk about creative financing and generational land ownership. And then we're going to open up for a panel. And I've invited some very passionate speakers to join us on a panel. Now, if you would like to participate in the panel, there is still time to participate in the panel. In fact, you can go to, let me get it up there on the screen there. You can go to jjclink.com. Okay, you can go to jjclink.com/Juneteenth. And when you upgrade, it will allow you to get the link. Oh, you know what? I got to fix something. You know why? Because it went out in an email. It didn't go out in the course. I'm so sorry. If you are watching this, please give me a second to fix something so that people can join the panel. I mean, everybody who registered got it in their email. And so you know what I think I might just do? Just give me a second. I'm sorry. I'm so embarrassed. I would put something on cool for you, but you know what? I'm just going to talk while I do this. Okay. This was, yeah, I just realized I meant to do that last night and actually drop it in. See, I didn't want to drop it in too soon because I didn't want people to try to log in too early, right? Like I didn't want that to happen into the broadcast. So what's going to happen is if you upgrade, oh my goodness, if you upgrade, what's going to happen is you will upgrade and you will get a link to be able to get in to the broadcast. It'll give you a backstage link. That's what I'm trying to say. And what I'm doing right now is I'm cutting and pasting that link into the actual class. I'm so embarrassed, but you know what? Sometimes we have to set our ego aside and do what's best. And so even though I send it out by email, I know some of you are like me, right? Like me, I got your email. It probably went to my spam, and Gmail does not make it easy to, it doesn't make it easy for you to search your spam. Like you have to go through special rigmaroles on the phone to search your spam, right? And so, I'm going to put it here because what I would do is if I didn't see it in my email right away, I would go look at the class that I upgraded in, right? So let me just put that in there and then we'll get started. The reason I keep saying we're going to talk about generational wealth empowerment is because there's a lot of ways to build wealth. And a lot of times we think that the way to get wealth is to grab everything we can get while we can get it. I mean, it's like the scarcity concept of being in the grocery store and there's 2 hams left on sale and there's 10 mamas trying to get those 2 hams. And I don't know about y'all, but I know even today when I don't have to worry, I clearly don't have to worry about whether or not there's food on my table, right? I mean, I'm so super stoked because this is a pregnancy shirt, right? It doesn't fit like it used to, but I'm happy to get back into it, right? But even I in this situation that I'm in now, and I'm fairly comfortable, and even now, I find myself with that scarcity mindset rising up in me, and especially when there's a sale and I only see 1 or 2 items left on that shelf. And I have to remind myself there's plenty enough for all of us. Okay. So let me adjust this a little quick. All right. So what we're going to come from for our first hour of discussion, and for those of you just joining us, again, we're doing 2 different things today. We are talking about generational wealth building, and then we're going to talk about creative financing and generational land ownership. And then we're going to bring in a little bit of a panel. We've got some real passionate people to come talk to us today about the impact of Juneteenth and these topics of generational financial empowerment. And then we're going to, depending on the time, I want to close with a special presentation for you. Short, it's fairly short, on the another seat at a table. Another seat at the table. It's a fantastic diversity training. I guarantee you it's like nothing you've ever had to sit through at your job. And the problem with diversity training, diversity and inclusion training, is a lot of times people think it's all about race. And it may often have that tone and discussion, and that may often appear to be the biggest problem in many of our markets. But it's really about inclusivity for everyone. And the problem that we sometimes have is, because the massive culture is so resistant to really addressing the race problem, now you're not addressing anybody's problem. And so I really like the way that this framework puts it so that everybody can have a seat at the table. And sometimes there's not enough seats at the table. So sometimes you got to make your own seat at the table. And sometimes we can be pioneers or champions to bring another seat to the table. All right. So I'm super, super excited about that. All right. Let me pull up. For those of you who have been in my classes before, you will have a copy of something called The Spirit of Opulence by Thomas Troward. Now, I am not a huge fan of that title, as you know, because although I love the concepts that I'm about to teach you are exactly how I got out of debt, right? But the $845,000 of debt, right? These are the strategies that I use to attack that. And for me, I love that. But the title doesn't necessarily project to me, as a holiness preacher woman, doesn't necessarily project to me what it is we're actually talking about. Okay. And so I have a whole class for those of you who are in ministry, or you're interested in all that kind of, a kind of wealth building, but you're really concerned about how some of these masters, maybe their faith wasn't where it needed to be, and you're really worried about teaching their content. I have a whole series. In fact, before I get into it, you might notice behind me, you got my son's YouTube channel there, but Authentic Abundance. We launched Authentic Abundance earlier this year, and it was a study of the science of getting rich. And as I got into it, I realized I needed to get super spiritual. So what we have done is we have separated them out, in a sense. Building Wealth Together is our corporate and secular instruction arm, but Authentic Abundance is really going to be geared towards the ministry, towards those in ministry. And we're going to go deep into the scriptures, and we're going to go deep into the teachings. So if you don't want to hear about my spiritual beliefs, well, I mean, you can't help but not hear about them. I mean, because who you are really comes out in these things, right? You can't listen to somebody for 4 hours and not get a sense of who they are and what they believe, right? You're going to get that spirit, whatever spirit I come in, that spirit of peace, that spirit of strife, the spirit of division, whatever spirit that is, you're going to get that whether or not I want to give it to you, right? It just comes. So, we've made Authentic Abundance. We realize that those are going to be more spiritual discussions. We're going to be talking about God the Father or the Holy Spirit. We're going to be talking about other religions. We're going to be talking about the implementation, a lot of these wealth building concepts in the world, but and how things tend to, adapt. Okay. So that's how it's going to be. All right. So let's get into it. Those of you who have the copy of Thomas Troward, if you don't, you can do a quick search and look up The Spirit of Opulence. Okay. And again, I know that name just kind of ruffles a few feathers, but I'm going to encourage you to hang with me for the next 40 minutes, because when I finally did read this, as my mentors had been trying to get me to for years, I was like, oh, this is how I got out of debt. All right. And so I'm seeing some new people on today. And again, for those of you, whatever channel you're on, there may only be a handful of people in that particular channel, but we're broadcasting on 7 different channels today. Okay. So you might be like, hey, wait a second, who's she talking to? But I see all these channels across my thing. And then I forgot to turn on Clubhouse. So I'm turning on Clubhouse. All right. Generational legacy, empowerment. Okay. So there we go. So I'm JJ Conway. When I I retired last year from the Air Force, mom of 2 kids, came out of a significant amount of debt, a lot of debt, over 6 figures of debt. And the way that I got out of that debt, somebody asked me the other day, she said, people always talk about wealth building and changing your generations and changing your family tree. And nobody ever really talks about how the nitty gritty of how they got out of debt. And I said, well, I talk about the nitty gritty of how I got out of debt, but nobody really wants to hear it because it's really not that impressive. People ask me all the time, well, how did you get out of debt? And I tell them and they're like, huh? So I'm going to tell you how I got out of debt. I'm going to tell you the specific things and actions I took of how I got out of over huge 6 figures debt. But I'm also going to tell you the how, because there's the things you do and then there's the who you are. And you need both. It's not just about what you do. And the reason a lot of us are failing to build wealth right now is because we're so worried about the do, and we're so worried about hustling, and we're so worried about getting our share of the pie that we aren't taking the time to be the person we need to be in order to have generational wealth. So the actions of what I did, very simple. Okay. When I first came home from that military trip and my stuff was sold and my house was thrown out and I was in all this debt, the very first thing I did, same thing I teach my clients to do, stop digging the hole deeper. I stopped spending, and I made a commitment to stop spending any money I did not have, which meant if I owed you, but I didn't have the money, I wasn't paying you. And there were times where I needed food and I was very tempted to go run up a credit card, but my ex had run up the credit card, so I had no room on any credit cards, and I couldn't get more credit cards. And I know that sounds horrible because by this time I had already been teaching get out of debt free. Get debt free. I'd already been teaching that for like 10 years. But when you're in the middle of the situation, you got this hungry kid, all you're thinking about is, I've got to put food on this table, right? And so when people come to me and they're like, well, I had to put stuff on the credit card and I had to do this and I had to do that. I'm like, I understand the motivation and I understand what it feels like because I remember being there. But you never have to do anything. You make a choice. And some choices have greater consequences than others. And some choices have more immediate consequences than others. And so in the moment, a lot of us make the quick choice. I'm going to use credit because I'm hungry and I need food and I need clothes and I need transportation and I need to get to this job interview. And once I get to this job interview, I'm going to make all this money and I'm going to be able to wipe all that out. And I'm telling you, it's always like a tail chasing the dog. It never seems to work out that way. And sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. I'll admit it. There are a lot of people who've built big businesses starting with a significant amount of debt. I'm not going to knock that. But there are more people who lost everything and continued to dig the hole deeper. And then they finally come to me when they're getting sued. As a financial planner, I help them through it, right? So I don't want you in that spot. But when I made a decision and I was tested on that decision, my son and I ate a lot of meals at Sam's Club. Because back before COVID, this was what, 11, 12 years ago, you could eat pretty well at Sam's Club if you made the rounds just right. And you could go from Sam's Club to Myers to who else? Kroger. Was there a Kroger's? No, I can't remember. But you could hop around from store to store and you could get at least 2 rounds from every store. So you don't have to go into debt to eat. And people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm like, okay, this is why nobody tells you how they got out of debt, because they either got out of debt by cheating and stealing and misrepresenting themselves, or they got out of debt about things nobody really wants to do. So that was the first thing I did. I made the commitment that I wasn't going to spend any money I didn't have. And in order to do that, I had to humble myself and I had to call a lot of creditors and explain that, yes, I'm a major in the United States Air Force, which I was at the time. Back then, I got promoted, but I was a major at that time. And yes, I make almost 6 figures a year. But you know what? Actually, I think it was with my side business, 6 figures a year. But I can't pay you. I'm $800,000 in debt. I can't pay you. I cannot make these payments. And I would have to make those calls. And that's the most humbling thing in the world. Like, it's one thing when you have no money, you got sick and you lost your job and you're making those calls. It's another thing when they're bad mouthing you. You're supposed to be this big leader and you're supposed to be this big officer and you're supposed to be this and this and that and that. And you're teaching at Air University and they find all the right buttons to make you feel like this big. Right. And And then you just have to be like, look, this is the situation I'm in. And so I made those calls. And when you make those calls, and you make those calls with a penitent heart, and when you make those calls and you promise you're going to pay them in full, they begin to work with you. And people don't want to make those calls, and people don't want to promise they're going to pay in full, because everybody hears on TV, oh, you can settle your debts for pennies on a dollar. So, but I knew I wanted better for me and my son. And I knew I never wanted to be in this position again. And so I made those phone calls, and I ran towards the creditors. It's the same thing that I teach people to do when they come to me for financial coaching. Then the next thing that I did was I hustled. I was already signed up with Mary Kay. I was already signed up with Avon. I will admit there were some issues with with Mary Kay, because I had thought, well, if I'm doing okay as an independent distributor, maybe I should go into leadership. And then when I got all these trainings about, I bought this huge kit of trainings from a former consultant, a former leader. And as I began to listen to the trainings, I was like, wow, this is not how I want to build my business. And so, no knock to people who do their business with integrity, but it just wasn't for me at that time. But Avon, I did Avon. And I had other network marketing businesses that didn't necessarily work out in that market. They had, being military, moved around. And so I had this here and I had this here. But in the market where I got the divorce and had the $800,000 of debt, things like Discovery Kids didn't work because it was 10 times the price of buying toys there. But Mary Kay worked because I offered a discount to my church, and Avon worked because I figured out that I could spend $25 each campaign on the books and the little bags to hang them, and I could run around town, and I would make a couple $100 with those. And that was enough to put food on the table, and that was enough to make sure that my kid could go to daycare. And that met the need, right? And then I started doing some real estate investment. And so many of you know that I teach about wholesaling. I don't believe in leveraging debt, because that's what ended me up in all that debt. And so I don't teach people to invest in real estate with debt, but wholesaling is a great way to learn about real estate and get out of debt. And then I discovered that I was really, really good at teaching people stuff. And so that's the business that I settled on to help me get out of the rest of the debt. And so those are, and the other thing that I forgot, oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot this, because it was actually the biggest source of income before I discovered that I could teach. I mean, consistent income. I mean, wholesaling, when you wholesale property, you make big chunks of money, right? But that wasn't consistent for me because I wasn't very good at it. I teach people how to be good at it. They can find me properties, but I wasn't very good at it myself. What they say, those who can do and those who can't teach. Well, hey, all of us making money, so it works, right? But the biggest thing that I did when I first started out, and this brought me about $1,000, $1,200, or $1,500 a month, was picking. I would go to consignment stores, thrift stores, like the Base Thrift Store, and I would swoop up all the stuff that was on clearance and turn around and resell it. Because the consignment store, the way it works, you take your old clothes, you try to sell them, and if they don't sell after a certain amount of time, you can either redeem them back or the store clearances them. I would go in there, I would get that $2 bag, I'd fill it as full of stuff as I could. I would turn around that Monday. They originally priced it at $100, I would price it at $50. They originally priced this at $50, I would price it at $20, and all my stuff sold. So I would make a lot of money picking, and people don't really think that's very glamorous, and people don't really like that, but it worked for me. Okay. And so those are the actions. But when we look at Thomas Troward's The Spirit of Opulence, what we find an explanation for why the actions of my wealth building activities didn't add up monetarily and numbers wise to getting out of all that debt. And so I want to take you through this because it's very well written. It's a short thing. It's a essay that he did. It was from The Hidden Power, which was a collection of his essays originally published in 1921. And what Thomas Troward says in the beginning of this is he says that it's a mistake to suppose. Just stop going from memory. He says it is a mistake to suppose that we must restrict and stint ourselves in order to develop greater power or usefulness. And this is to form the conception of the divine power as so limited that the best we can make use of it is by a policy of self-starvation, whether material or mental. And so what he's saying here is a lot of us think that the only way to attract wealth into our life is to have a policy of restriction, a policy of starvation. We're going to scrimp and save. Now, y'all know I'm a big fan of being frugal with your money. Why? Because when I want to go shop, I don't want to worry about how much something costs. So I'm willing to be frugal in other areas like my food preparation and what kinds of things, what kinds of clothes I buy for my children. I'm willing to be frugal in those areas because when I go to Nagua's boutique, I'm not going to be frugal. All right. When I go shopping for shoes in Dallas, I'm not going to be frugal. I'm going to get what looks good on me and what feels good on me. And I don't want to worry about the price. So I'm willing to put guardrails in place to make sure that I have the freedom to do what I want to do. All right. And so I'm a huge fan of being frugal and planning and being strategic with your money. But scarcity will never get you out of debt. Scarcity mindset and poverty mindset will keep you bound forever. And worse, it will keep your future generations bound. And what Troward says here in his opening statement is that when you live from this scarcity mindset, that in order to develop greater usefulness or greater power, we must restrict and come from the scarcity mindset. He's saying what you're really doing is saying that God is not good enough. God is not powerful enough. And he's also saying if that's the only way that you think that you're going to get anywhere, that's what it's going to be for you. He says, if you really think that, and so long as you entertain this belief, the fact is actually so for us. Whatsoever is not of faith, that is what is not so, that's not in accordance with our honest belief, is sin. And acting contrary to what we believe, we bring in a suggestion of opposition to God, which then paralyzes our efforts and surrounds us with a murky atmosphere of distrust and want of joy. So there's a lot of us out there who have been working hard. We've been burning the candle at both ends. We've taken on extra jobs. We've got 2 or 3 side hustles. We've been doing everything we can to get ahead. But the reason we're not getting ahead is because our deep down belief rests on a misapprehension. That's the way he calls it here, a misapprehension of the nature of our power. Because we think of everything as limited. This is all there is, and I got to get mine, and you don't get any. And he says we've got to realize that our creative power in ourselves is unlimited, and there's no reason for limiting the extent to which we might enjoy what we create. Okay? And so if we're drawing from the infinite, and a lot of us, especially those of you who watch my channel or who are attracted to my body of work, a lot of us will sit in church on Sunday and we will say, or Saturday, and we'll say that we believe that God is infinite and we believe he has all power and we believe we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And then we're afraid that there's not enough. The danger, what Troward says, is we don't sufficiently realize our own richness. And we look on the external things that we have as being the true riches instead of the creative power of spirit ourselves. But if we will flip that around, and if we will realize that we have this infinite storehouse to take from, that there's no need to limit ourselves, because we can have, do, and be all things. And he says the way to counteract this is to think with what he calls opulence. We must be opulent in thought. Now, in today's verbiage, the word opulence has a real negative connotation. That's why I've thought about rewriting this in something that I feel like is more confident for today. And so in today's world, that has a really negative connotation. But when you read through what he wrote, I really believe what he's talking about is abundant. And he says we must be opulent in our thought. And he says, don't think money is such, because it's only one means of opulence, but think opulence that is largely, generously, liberally. Well, then you'll find that the means of this thought will allow you to flow from all quarters, whether as money or as 100 other things not to be reckoned in cash. And so what he's saying here is he's saying that we have had such a restrictive mindset. And we're talking about this on Juneteenth, and I don't want to make this imply that only Black people have this restrictive mindset. I see it in poor people all over the world, a very restrictive mindset that thinks scarcity, there's either scarcity or evil richness, right? And B thinks that the only way to get ahead is by is if we have enough money. And then another thing is not being able to think largely, generously, which he calls opulent. But when we begin to work that way, we find that everything flows. And it doesn't just flow for us, but it flows for our future generations. And so we must not, this is what he says here. He says, don't make yourself dependent on any particular form of wealth or insist on it coming to us through some particular channel, because that imposes a limitation and it shuts out other forms of wealth and closes other channels. Okay. And so there's all kinds of ways to walk in wealth and abundance and generational empowerment. And when we're only focused on this thing, this one thing, this money, boy, I wish I had some money here to do. I should have brought some in. If we're just focused on the money, then we're closed off to all the other channels. But when I was getting out of over $800,000 of debt, all these other channels is what was feeding me. And all these other channels is what was giving me a great life. And all these other channels is where I was getting the free tickets. And all these other channels are where the doors were opening up. We have to shift from a scarcity mindset to a poverty mindset. And the poverty, no. We have to shift from a scarcity and a poverty mindset to a prosperity and an abundance mindset. And the prosperity mindset says that there is enough, and there is enough. And not only is there enough, but there's enough for me. See, a lot of us believe that there's enough, all right, but we don't believe it for us. We believe it for everybody else. Oh, we'll pray it, but we don't believe it for everybody else. But I'm going to encourage you today to really examine your beliefs, because like I said earlier, most of the people that come to my channel, not everybody, and y'all know I welcome everybody, right? But most of the people who come to my channel, they profess to be Christians, right? Well, if you feel like you are connected to the great God who's given us the great Holy Spirit, and the Spirit is life, then why do you feel like the only way to get wealth or to have abundance, the abundance that was promised by you, or promised to you when Jesus said, I come that they might have life and that more abundantly? Well, why do you feel like the only way to get that is to live in a scarcity mindset, that there's not enough for them and not enough for me, so I'm going to get mine, I don't care what it takes? See, that's not how it works. We have to work in circulation. And he says that the spirit of life and throughout the universe, life ultimately consists in circulation, whether within the physical body of the individual, like our fluids and stuff, right? Or on the scale of the entire solar system. And circulation means a continual flowing. And there's no exception to this universal law of life. And he says, when this principle becomes clear to us, we'll see that our attention should be directed rather to the giving than the receiving. Oh, we must not look upon ourselves as misers' chests to be kept locked, right? As misers' chests to be kept locked for our own benefit, but as centers of distribution. And the better we fulfill our function as such centers, the greater will be the corresponding inflow. If we choke the outlet, the current must slacken, and a full and free flow can be obtained only by keeping it open. It's like a fire hose. Now, fire hose is not the right answer, but it's like a hose, right? I mean, a fire hose is the same concept, but that's just got such a bad connotation. You close it off and choke it off, it's not doing anybody any good. But by keeping it open and allowing a flow, now more can come through you and to you. And so for him, what he's calling this opulent mode of thought, it's in cultivating the feeling that we possess all sorts of riches that we can bestow upon others and which we can bestow liberally, because this is the way we open greater supplies to flow in. And what happens to a lot of us of all races, what happens to a lot of us who are in poverty, we say, well, I don't have any money. I could barely pay for the things I have. I don't have anything to give. And that's the point where I was. And you know what he says? He says the answer is we must always start from the point where we are. And if your wealth at the present moment is not abundant on the material plane, that's not where you start. There are all other sorts of wealth on the spiritual and intellectual planes, which you can give, and you can start from this point and practice this spirit of opulence, this spirit of generosity and large thinking, even though your balance at the bank might be nil. And see, as a financial planner, I love this because there's a couple of mindsets that really hold people in poverty. And one of them, like we've discussed, is that scarcity mindset. The other one, some of y'all are going to really resonate with this one. The other one that we really want to discuss is the obligation mindset. See, the obligation mindset is where you finally get to do a little well for yourself. Maybe you made it to college. Maybe you got the good job. Maybe you were able to get out of debt and buy a home. And now you were actually able to pull ahead of the pack. And now, instead of celebrating you and being happy for you and everybody else trying to aspire to do that in their lives, now everybody else is like, oh, wait a second, you owe me. Who do you think you are? You need to come off your high horse. You owe me some of that. I still remember when I had family members tell me I owed them my paycheck. And I thought to myself, did you suffer for 4 years at the Air Force Academy? I'm sorry. You were drinking and playing around. How come I owe you just because I got me a good job? I'm sorry. I had 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears and being told I couldn't do what I wanted to do because I was black to get my good degree that led to my good job. I'm sorry. How come I owe you? See, a lot of us, and I get so many big-hearted people who have really they really want to do good, and they feel like they have more than they ever needed, more than they ever had growing up. And I remember when me and my ex-husband were in that position, when we first graduated from the Air Force Academy and we were called into the ministry, and both of us were making more money than we'd ever seen. And I know for some of you watching, you're like, lieutenants in the Air Force don't make that much. But when he grew up in Bonnie Doon in Fayetteville, and I grew up an Air Force brat of an enlisted family, we both graduated from the Air Force Academy and day one made more money than our families had ever seen. Well, our immediate families. I found out later that my extended family was actually pretty well to do in some areas. But for what I grew up with, we didn't have anything like that. And so for both of us, we were like, okay, well, we're going to have fun and we're going to help people. And we found out real quick that a lot of people feel real entitled to your wealth. And you find yourself constrained by this spirit of obligation. Well, we don't want to be constrained by a spirit of scarcity, and we don't want to be constrained by a spirit of obligation. Instead, we want to work in what Troward calls opulence, which in his definition earlier, is this spirit of thinking generously and living largely. And he says that even if you've got nothing in the bank, you got something spiritually and intellectually that you can give. And that's where you start when you got nothing in the bank. And when you start there, the universal law of attraction will begin to assert itself on your behalf. And you will not only begin to experience an inflow on that spiritual and intellectual planes, but it extends to the material plane also. And the amazing thing about this concept in my life and your life is that once you get this concept down and you pass this concept down to your generations, they will never have to be poor again. I want to say that again. If you get this concept and you walk in this concept and teach it to your future generations, not just verbally, but by how you live, because more is caught than taught. If you will teach this concept to your future generations, they will never have to be poor again. That doesn't mean somebody won't be called to a season of lack. It doesn't mean somebody might be called to serve in a poor community or serve in an area where they choose to forego worldly possessions or where they choose to forego worldly wealth, but they won't have to be poor. And that is how you have generational empowerment. Troward goes on to say that if you have realized this spirit of opulence, you cannot help to drawing to yourself material good, as well as that higher wealth, which is not to be measured by a money standard. And because you truly understand this, you will neither, this is interesting, you will neither affect to despise this form of good, nor will you attribute to it a value that does not belong to it, but you will coordinate it with your more other interior forms of wealth so as to make it the material instrument in smoothing the way for their more perfect expression. Somebody's like, JJ, that's a lot of words for early Saturday morning. But what he's saying here, okay, and this is why I like the way he wrote it, because it really makes you think. And that's the purpose of these guys. They don't want you to just absorb, they want you to think. They want the neurons to form so that you can go out and do. All right. What he's saying here is that once you get this, then you won't despise money. You won't despise intellectual or spiritual currency, okay? And you won't attribute to money something that it shouldn't be there. You know, my son, he came in the other day. We've been playing a lot of Monopoly. Apparently, it's his favorite game now. And even though he's not even in kindergarten yet, he can count out how much it is for his properties. He'll count. Here's 100 and 120 and 130 and 135. And I'm like, I don't think I could even do that in third grade. I don't know, y'all. but one day he was like, I love money. I was like, honey, scripture says the love of money is the root of all evil. And he was like, well, don't you love money, mommy? You always teach about money. You teach everybody how to get money. And I was like, well, I don't love money. I enjoy money. So for the next 3 days, he went around, I enjoy money. I don't love it, but I enjoy it. And so what Trower is saying here is once you really get this, you will not despise money, which a lot of us do. And you also won't attribute to it a value that really doesn't exist. Instead, you're going to use it to coordinate with all the other more interior things, your intellectual property, your spiritual wealth, all of those things, your health. And so it becomes an instrument that paves the way for you to have more perfect expression in all these other areas. See, some of you have been tied up with these toxic jobs and you've not been able to really express who you are because you don't have enough money to walk away. Some of you have been tied up in your bodies. You have so much that you're called to do, and you have so many people that you want to serve, and you have so much talent bursting to come out, but you can't do anything about it because you don't have any money right now. And you feel like, oh, if I just money will make everything perfect. And what he's saying is go out and make yourself a good life now, and the money will come. Let's not attribute to it a value that doesn't belong, but let's understand that it makes a lot of things easier. It's a lot easier to do a lot of good when you have a lot of money. Man, I should put that on a meme. Somebody drop that in the comments for me. It's a lot easier to do a lot of good when you got a lot of money, all right? That's not how he said. That's my paraphrase. You know how they do. They take the quotes and they twist it. I think I'm gonna take that one. But really, when we look at it this way, he says when we use money this way, we understand the relation that it bears to the spiritual and the intellectual wealth, and material wealth becomes unified with them. So my material wealth is no more to be shunned and feared than it is to be sought for its own sake. I don't shun, and I really used to be afraid of it. I remember somebody when I was younger. Her husband died. She was a friend of one of the ministers in my church. Her husband died, and he left her with all these apartment complexes and real estate holdings that she didn't know he had. Because a lot of military guys do this. They don't tell their wives what they have. And a lot of guys, I mean, I actually think it's a smart practice to do the living part. I just think you should tell your spouse. But a lot of the guys, they would never let their wife know when they got a promotion. or not a promotion, when they got a pay raise, because every year you get a pay raise. And so until they got the next promotion, their wife would think they were still living off of what they originally made. And then they would get the promotion, but they would never tell their wife how much of a promotion they got. Now, I don't know why people don't just go look it up, but that's a whole nother thing. But you have this woman, and she was deathly afraid for her life. She was so convinced that somebody was going to kill her to take the property. And it really ruined her life. And I remembered that and thought, oh, well, you know what? Maybe it's better to just be poor, because here I am fighting this obligation spirit, like you owe me, you owe me. And for those of you who didn't hear that part, we've talked about how poverty spirit really hinders people. And we also talked about how an obligation spirit hinders people. So this poverty mindset being that which keeps us feeling like there's not enough for everybody. So I've got to claw my way to get what I need, which is going to block abundance from flowing in your life. And then this obligation mindset that, oh, you did a little better, but now you owe the rest of us, even though you had hard work and you did all these things, and we just played around and drank and smoked. We're entitled to your wealth now. We're entitled to your stuff. And so a lot of people are kept bound by that because they're constantly paying for people who won't get the right mindset for themselves. All right. And then now we're seeing another thing that holds a lot of us back. And that is that we really attribute to money either too positive a value, or in the case of most of the people that listen to me who are active in ministry, we attribute to it too negative a value, instead of understanding that it works in unity with the intellectual wealth that we've been granted, or the spiritual wealth that we grow in God. Okay. It is not money, but the love of money that is the root of evil. And this spirit, what he's calling the spirit of opulence, which is this spirit of generosity and living large and large thinking, okay, is precisely the attitude of mind which is the furthest removed for the love of money for its own sake. It doesn't believe in money. JJ, you're talking to us about generational financial empowerment. What do you mean we're not supposed to be believing in money, money, money? What we're looking at here is an attitude of living that is in the generous feeling, which is in this recognition of a great law of circulation, and doesn't make its question, how much am I going to get by money? But instead, how much am I going to do by money? It's a shift in the mindset. And we talked about this with Think and Grow Rich. It's not think and get rich, it's think and grow rich. And as I grow rich, what am I going to do? How am I going to empower? What change am I going to make? And in making this first question, now the getting flows in with a generous profusion, with he says spontaneousness and rightness of direction that are not there when our first thought is only of what we gonna get. And he's saying here, we're not called to give on what we don't have, but we're not called to give what we don't have, but we are called to start where we are. And this is why, those of you who heard me say in the beginning, I resisted reading this essay because the guy called it the spirit of opulence. And I didn't even give him a chance to explain what opulence was, the thinking of generosity, right? This generous living and generous being able to give. And then when I got into this, I was like, oh my goodness, I like this guy. He's saying here in this next paragraph, he's saying, if you don't have the money, don't give the money. He's saying, don't go into debt. Don't go into debt. Give what you have. And know that by doing so, you're setting these universal laws into action, and eventually it'll bring you greater inflows. And see, this is another part of the poverty mindset. This is why our generations haven't been empowered, because we really think we've bought into this myth that the way to get ahead is to take on all this debt and we do this hard work. We take on this debt and we do these little things. And 20 years from now, it's going to pay off. 10 years from now, it's going to pay off. Well, what happens to some people? Yes, it works. But you know what happens to most people? They are right back where they started from. And 20 years from now, your kids are going to be sitting on the same stoop. And it's up to you to make up your mind that you're going to do something about it. That you're going to shift your mindset, and you're going to show your generations a new, better, more excellent way. He's saying here that if we'll make a commitment to working with what we have. We're not going into debt, but we're living according to these abundant and prosperity principles, that we will have greater and greater inflows. And so eventually the money and our outgiving will increase, not because we've deprived ourselves of any part of our life, but by finding that every expansion makes us a more powerful instrument for the expanding the life of others. He's saying here, live and let live is the motto of true opulence, the motto of true generous thinking, and the motto of true abundance. I hope that you have enjoyed this discussion of generational empowerment. And even more important than enjoying it, I hope you have taken hold of these concepts. Because like I said earlier, if you take hold of these concepts and you pass them on to your future generations, your progeny, your legacy, your future generations will never have to be poor. All right, y'all. We are going to continue with our Juneteenth discussion. I am so excited for this next topic. If you all will just give me a few seconds to cack it up, we are going to talk about creative financing and generational land ownership. Now, for those of you who are new to building wealth together, every third Saturday, we do an entrepreneur class, and then we also do a real estate investing class. We used to do it all in one. It used to be the first half of the year we did mindset. The second half, the first third of the year we did mindset. Second third of the year we did real estate. Third of the year we did entrepreneurship. But now both streams have grown so much that we're doing each of them on their own. And I had a little problem. Those of you who've been on this in this group for 7 years, you've been through 6 iterations of creative financing. And unfortunately, I was we're trying to realign some things, and I deleted the slides. And then I started talking to someone about it. I was like, I need to rebuild these slides. I don't have enough time. I need to rebuild these slides. And then I realized, you know what? I don't know that I need to rebuild these slides, because the slides were kind of complicated anyway. So we are going to have a discussion. We're going to have a discussion about generational land ownership. We're going to talk about creative financing. We're going to talk about what creative financing is and isn't. We're going to talk about traditional financing. We're going to talk about land ownership. And then at the end, we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls of land ownership. Okay. And so you can see, let me see if I can pull it up here. You can see the topic there. Just give me a second to grab my notes. And again, I'm super glad that you're here. Okay. So, all right. The reason I wanted to move our creative financing topic to Juneteenth is because I think it's a perfect fit for generational empowerment. See, in my opinion, my professional opinion as well as my personal opinion, but as a financial planner, absolutely informing my professional opinion, land ownership is the key to not only building wealth in this country, but also sustaining wealth. See, it's not just about how much money you make, but it's also about how much wealth you keep, how much abundance you flow in. Remember what we learned in the first session. It's not just about get. It's about being a flow and being open to the flow of more as everything circulates to and through you. Okay. And so with generational land ownership, a lot of times we have a lot of preconceived notions about home ownership and land ownership. And as a financial planner, I'm going to be honest with you. And I already know I'm going to ruffle some feathers, because I see some people who are avid real estate investors that are already jumping in, and that are watching or listening in. And so I already know that what I'm going to say is going to be contrary to what a lot of real estate investors say. In fact, my blog on Bigger Pockets, what I used to post on it every day, I would make so many people so mad, because what does Bigger Pockets and almost every other real estate guru out there teach? you leverage debt, other people's money, blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, I'm like, okay, that does work on occasion. It does work on occasion, but it also has a lot of pitfalls. And so let's talk a little bit about land ownership, and then let's talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the things that can really trip a lot of us up. And so land ownership in this country, it really is a path to building wealth. In fact, in the beginning of the way that the founding fathers set up the country, you couldn't even vote and stuff if you didn't have land. And so those laws were changed to allow more people input into how they were governed. But we have to understand that there's a significant amount of security and place that comes from land ownership. And for all of its faults and all of its warts, this is the best country that I know of, and I've lived in quite a few and visited many others. This is the best country I know of for all of us to have access to build wealth. And one of those vehicles is through land ownership, home ownership, property ownership. Okay. And so a lot of times we don't think that we can actually afford a home or get a home. Now, I am going to tell you one of the first things that I say that ruffles a lot of feathers is that it's not necessarily a bad thing to rent if you can't afford a home. Now, if you really want to strike out and get your own home and you really want to accelerate the process, there are certainly some techniques to do it. But one of the things that really pains me as a financial planner is to have young couples come to me who their parents told them, don't throw away money paying rent. And they went and bought this house and then they had no money to fix it up. And even worse, when people come from a background of always renting and they don't realize the responsibilities that come with home ownership. With great how's that say? With great benefit comes great responsibility. And so we have to understand those things. And so I personally don't recommend buying property until you're financially ready to buy property. And not only just buy the property, not only just maintain the house that you're living in or the space that you're renting out, but there's a lot more that goes into maintaining property. You know, when you inherit, those of you who might have an ability to do this, I know I don't, but you know, somebody who inherits 200 acres or 100 acres or somehow suddenly comes into land ownership, if you don't learn how to manage that land, someone else can bit by bit take your land legally from you. It was one of the shockingest things that I discovered when I was going through to become a realtor. When I was going through to become a realtor, one of the things that shocked me the most is that if you squat on somebody's land long enough, after a while, by law, it's yours. I'm like, what? What kind of sense does that make? Well, you know, it's in the law. And so you've got to understand these things and you've got to learn about these things. But let's just continue our discussion today with creative financing. Let's just continue our discussion today coming from the perspective that land ownership is a good thing, right? That land ownership is a good thing, that we're going to get ourselves in a financial position to be able to take advantage of land ownership. And in the meantime, we want to do it in a way that doesn't add more debt to our bottom line or that doesn't hinder our future generations. Okay. Because let's see if I can pull it up for you. Here's one of the things that really grieves me about home ownership. Not home ownership, about anything. You know what? I'm not even going to pull it up because I'm looking at my time. Okay. Here's one of the things that really grieves me about any kind of anything, any endeavor that we take. And if you want to get more into this, contact me offline and I will give you access to something at a very, very good price that will walk you through how all this money stuff works, how these loans work, how the money works and all that stuff. Okay. I was going to try to pull it up for you. And then I realized it's going to take too much effort to really do it the way I wanted to. So I apologize. I messed up on that, but maybe I'll do a special class. Would y'all like me to do a special class on that? Maybe we'll do a special class on that. All right. Because I don't want to just give that one away for free. I want to do a special class, but you know, if you reach out to me and you put some effort, we'll get you, I'll put some effort for you. Right. But we have to understand that there's ways that money works in this world. And the way that money generally works is when you borrow money, you're borrowing it with interest. And what a lot of us in some of the disadvantaged situations, or we don't come from a legacy of homeownership, what we don't realize is that the things that are being set up to supposedly help us are actually hurting us. And so there's a lot of strategies, even the creative strategies, that actually in the long run can hurt. But what I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to share with you some things about these strategies that will actually allow you to build wealth. And again, if you teach them to your next generations, they will not have to be poor. And I tell my son all the time, you will not have to be poor. Now, you may choose to be poor. You may make decisions that cause you to be poor, but you won't be poor because your mama didn't teach you how money works and how to get ahead and how to do something with your life. That'll be you. And so I didn't, my parents did the best they could. Didn't your parents do the best they could? Didn't your parents do the best they could? But they just didn't know. My parents knew some things, but they didn't know all the things I learned when I went off to financial planning school, right? And so we got to look at these things. But when it comes to buying property, most of us think we're going to save a little something down, or we're going to go through one of these programs like the VA loan or the FHA loan that helps people that are in certain situations where they need some help to get a home, certain first-time home buyer programs, things like that. And we're going to go get a mortgage. And a mortgage is great if you're going to buy a house. I don't like debt, but if you're going to buy a house to live in, that's the one time I'm going to be like, okay, here's how you get your debt, right? Like normally people ask me how to get a loan for this or a loan for that. And I'm like, you are talking to the wrong gal. But when it comes to mortgages, I'm like, okay, that's something that's generally going to be okay if you do it the right way. What I'm going to recommend is that you really do your research. Because one of the things that I found out is that sometimes these special programs, they cost you so much in the long run that you would have been better off to wait. Okay. And this isn't a program about all of those, so we're not going to dig into all of them. But what I do want to dig into some of these creative financing strategies. And if it sounds like I'm stalling a little bit, it is because I thought I had something pulled that I was going to pull up for you, and I'm not seeing it here. And I don't really want to leave anything out. All right, well, we're just going to go. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about creative financing strategies. Let me talk to you about what those actually are. I've mentioned it like 20 times and I haven't even said anything. I've shown you the pretty slide. I mean, isn't that a pretty slide? Isn't that a pretty slide? But I haven't actually said what creative financing strategies are. Okay, so normal thinking about going to buy a house, you go to the bank or a mortgage broker, you get a mortgage, and that's how you pay for the house. You pay them back over time. They own the house, so you pay it. They technically own the house, so you pay it back. You might own it. You might have a deed. They might have leverage. It depends on the state that you're in. But bottom line, that house is not yours free and clear until it's paid off, which is understandable, okay? Because somebody else footed the bill. We get that. Then when you buy a house, you get a regular mortgage. You may have protections to protect the person who's giving you the mortgage, so you might have to pay extra insurance for that. Of course, whoever gave you the mortgage is going to want to be compensated, so you're going to pay extra for as far as interest and all that goes. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's you're using my money to buy your property. You're going to give me something in return, right? So I'm good with that. I just think that we have to be very careful of it. And one of the things that happened when me and a bunch of others got into a whole lot of debt was we were not careful about the terms and the conditions of which we were signing. And so if you're going to go the traditional route, you really, really, really want to be aware of what you're doing and what you're signing. Okay. This isn't something where you just go out and trust whoever's calling you, whoever's marketing to you. You want to get your own counsel. You want to get somebody who's on your side. You want to get your own buyer's agent who's got your fiduciary best interest at heart. Okay. On the flip side of the traditional way we go buy a house, which was where we find a house we like, we go to the bank, we get a mortgage to pay for it, we pay them back. On the flip side of that, if you're willing to be a little more flexible in what kind of house you get, there are some very creative strategies. Now, I say creative strategies. There's only one that I really, really like, but that's because the others have some issues and the others bring more debt. But the others can still be valuable. So that's why I'm going to tell you about them. So the first thing I'm going to tell you about is lease option. Okay. And um, the way a lease option works, is you can't buy this house today, but you really, really want that house. And you don't want somebody else to buy it because it's going to be like 10 years before they leave. And you want that house in a year or two, right? And so you make an agreement with the owner that they will let you rent the house, and then you will pay them a fee for the right to buy it at a predetermined price later. And during that time, now you are working on getting your credit together so you can get a traditional mortgage. You're working on maybe fixing up the house a little bit, depending on your agreement with the owner. You're working on getting your life straight so that you can have some savings to fix all the things that go wrong when you have a house. Because even with the home warranty, you still got to have some money in the bank to deal with the house. But you're taking the time to do all those things, but you're still living in the house, and you've made an agreement that you're going to buy the house. Now, the person who owns the house doesn't know if property values are going to skyrocket or if they're going to drop by time you get to where you're going to be able to buy this house. So they usually charge an option fee. That's why it's called a lease option. You are leasing the house with an option to buy, and you are buying the option to buy. It's usually a fee of like $1,000 or $3,000, $5,000. You're paying the owner an option fee for the right to buy the house later. So the cool thing about this kind of an arrangement is when later comes, the owner can't say, oh, I'm not going to sell you the house now because it's COVID and now all of a sudden all the housing prices have doubled. I mean, that's what people are experiencing right now. No. You hold up your contract. And you say, oh, you agreed. I paid you this option fee. Now I'm going to buy your house. And that can be a very effective creative strategy if you can't qualify right now, but you know that you just need some stability in your life. And if you're in a market like Shreveport, Louisiana, or some of these other markets where the rental prices are way higher than the purchase prices, then this may be an excellent avenue for you. I am going to tell you right now, there's a lot of predatory behavior that go along with lease options. So much so that some states like Texas don't allow you to maintain long-term leases under a lease option category. Here in Texas, you have to have put that person's name on the deed in 6 months. So there's different ways that they go about it. You might do an owner finance, which is what we're going to talk about next. That's the next creative strategy we're going to talk about. You might do owner financed, or they'll do 6-month leases to get around it, right? Like, I'm like, okay, well, whatever works, as long as people are winning, I'm good with that. But there's some very predatory behaviors that happen in this realm, because there are some people who know that they're going to charge, and what they're going to do, that person is never going to qualify. They're never going to get their credit together. They're never going to be able to get that traditional loan, and they're going to keep paying that option fee every year. It's almost like bonus rent. So if you're going to use this creative strategy, okay, and it is a fantastic strategy in the right position, because you're showing consistent payment. Your landlord is now reporting that payment on your credit. You've got stability in your payments. You're going to be there for a year or 2 or 3, whatever you agree on. And you're able to have that consistency in your budget, and you're able to clean all your other messes up to be able to qualify for a good mortgage loan, and you're able to save something. This can be phenomenal. But if you're going to be in one of these situations where you're paying that option fee over and over and over, well, you could be living somewhere else and putting that option fee in the bank. And this brings me to one of my biggest pet peeves with any kind of wealth building method. We get sold these bills of goods that promise us it's going to help us get better. But in the end analysis, when you really look at the money, how the money shakes out, you find that it's actually doing worse for you than if you were to have just dropped down a little bit and put the money in the bank. And it's not just real estate. Okay. This happens all the time. Let's look at college loans. Okay. Real quick. We're talking about creative financing for houses and properties and commercial and all the other stuff. You can use the same creative financing techniques, but it's the same with college loans. Oh, we're gonna let everybody go to college now. We're gonna make college accessible to everybody. But we're gonna give you a college loan. And oh, you don't get enough through the federal loan. So guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna give you a privatized loan. Oh, what do you mean? Privatized loan? Thank you so much for all these wonderful terms. Oh, and now you find out you can't bankrupt it, and they can change the terms because it's not federally regulated. And yes, you get your college degree, but you spend the next 10 years of your life paying that back, or you spend the next 10 years of your life working at a Title I school, only to find out you don't qualify for the payback after all, because like only 1% of the people who qualify get it. And now you're stuck. And I don't want you to be stuck. And too many people, I know nobody who's watching me right now is going to be like, JJ, I'm stuck, because everybody's doing well. We all have a facade to maintain. We all have an image to maintain, and we're not going to let anybody know I'm stuck. But I get the messages. I talk to so many gurus. I talk to so many speakers. I talk to so many top coaches. I talk to so many people who behind closed doors, they're like, I'm stuck and I don't see any way of getting out. And these things that I'm teaching you today, they may not be exotic, they may not be flashy, but they work. All right. And so we have to really analyze what is really going on here. And is there a better, more abundant, more efficient, more effective way to achieve our goals? But lease option can be a very good goal for you. Okay. Now, some of us, and I do mean us. That's not a royal we, right? Like, I'm not trying to say us to make you feel better about you. I mean us. Some of us, we're never going to get no loan. And me and my husband, we fall into that category. I mean, I'm not big on loans anyway, right? But even if I was big on loans, I'm married to somebody that don't pay their bills, and he's married to somebody that don't pay the mortgage that they're on. So even though we got divorce decrees that say I'm not responsible for this and he's not responsible for that, and even though in real life you're supposed to send those into the credit bureaus and they are supposed to take that into account, the reality is people are people, and they have systems, and so many things are automated, and just point blank, people don't care. And so if you're in a situation where you can't get anybody to care, maybe you need to look for a property that uses this next strategy, and that is owner finance. See, owner finance is where the person who owns the property is financing it to you. It's still debt, it's still a loan, but now you've got somebody who's working with your individual situation. Okay, so if I was to go buy a house today, because I'm so conjoined on all these other things, because of all the other whatever, I am not going to be able to qualify for a property. So I would approach the owner and say, or qualify for a loan on a property. So I would approach the owner and say, here's my payment history. Here's my bill history. Clearly, I make good money. And here's everything that lets you know that I'm going to take care of your house, your property wall. Well, I mean, I'm not your property because I'm going to buy it, but I'm going to pay you. I present all of my information that reassures that owner I'm going to pay you. And then we enter into a private arrangement where I'm going to pay them for their property. Okay. Excuse me. This is an excellent way if you've had a lot of issues or a lot of trouble and it just seems like it can't get cleaned up anytime soon, or excuse me, or it's had a lot of financial rigmarole or legal rigmarole that you just can't seem to extricate yourself from. This is an excellent strategy to allow you to move forward. And see, what we want to do is move forward. We don't want to move backwards. We want to move forwards, okay? And so owner financing can be a great deal. Now, there are some pitfalls to watch out for with owner financing because, again, somebody is taking on great personal risk. And if you're taking on more risk, well, you're going to want to be more compensated for that risk, right? That's how the market works. Risk versus reward. The more risk I take, the more reward I get. The less risk I take, the less reward I get. So your more riskier investments, greater risk of losing money, but greater risk of big payoff. Your more stable, although no investment is ever safe, your more safer investments, lower risk, but you also get lower payout. Okay. It's the same here. The owner is taking a chance on you, and what rate of interest, what rate of return, what compensation for their risk that they are able to work with you on is going to depend on how well you assure them that you are going to pay them and their own personal preferences. So you could buy a house and not have to go to the bank to get a mortgage, but you might be paying way more for it than you ever should. So again, it's important to have somebody in your corner. Now, don't worry. I'm not selling you into real estate services. I let my realtor's licenses lapse. But if you need a good realtor, I know I've got some watching today. I'm looking at all the different channels that we're broadcasting on, and I know I've got some good realtors watching today. But don't worry, we're not here to sell you anything. We're here to empower you. Okay, don't get me wrong. Sometimes taking your next step is taking action, and taking action means giving up something. And the easiest thing for you to give up is information and money, right? So anyway, we're going to get off of that. Owner financing can be an excellent strategy. The cool thing about owner financing is this can apply to any property. This can apply to land. This can apply to property you want to live in for your own home. This can apply to properties as rent homes. This can apply to properties that are commercial. Right? So you can find commercial property. You've always wanted to open up a shop, or you always wanted to be a landlord of commercial properties, or you want to be a landlord of an apartment complex, and I love apartments, and we can talk about that in a second, or we can talk about it now. I don't know, but I love apartments because if you get an apartment complex, you can live there as the manager, right? As the manager. You can live there as the manager, and you've got everybody else paying your rent, paying your mortgage, right? If you do it right. Okay. So owner finance is a very, very powerful strategy. Okay. So the next strategy, actually, before I go on to the next strategy, if people have questions, let me go ahead and answer those now, because what I'm going to say is kind of a combination of the two strategies we just talked about. And it can be a little complicated. So I'm going to draw it out. I love that we have the tech guru online too. She's also very active in real estate, and she's going to be one of my speakers for the panel. So stay tuned. But I thought of her today as I accidentally deleted all those files, thinking I was moving them, and I was able to recover them, but they all recovered with file 001, file 002. So I was like, I got 3,000 files to figure out where these slides are. That's not going to work. So for those of you who already have a home, but you're looking at using land ownership, property ownership to build generational wealth, there is a strategy you can use to both acquire and sell, rent, lease properties that combines the two things that we just talked about. And it's called lease option. Okay. So we are going to, I'm going to draw it out real quick. And I'm going to show you how this works. Okay. So you've got the property. We're going to make it a house. You've got the owner. I'm going to make this a guy with a hat here. Oh, why did I make it a hat? A guy. I don't know. And then we're going to make this lady here with the ponytail. She can be me. And don't y'all laugh at my stick figures. Well, actually, you can laugh because I would laugh too. And then you've got this family. I'm going to be a mom and her little boy. That'll be me 11 years ago. When I found myself a single mom, did not know what I was going to do, discovered just how much everybody looks down on single moms because they don't realize that, and it shouldn't matter, but they don't realize that you came home from deployment and your ex decided he was going to move on. All right. So here's the property. I know this is kind of amateur hour, but I'm going to explain this thing. Okay. So we've got the guy in the hat as our owner. The lady at the bottom is our investor. And the lady and her son at the top is our family. Okay. Now, what I just talked to you about, this lease option, would be where our investor is going to, let me put the family off there for a second. I don't want her involved yet. Our investor is going to come to this guy to rent his house, and she's going to pay him an option fee for the right to buy it. Okay. So she's going to say, okay, Mr. Guy, I'm going to pay you $500 a month for your house, and I'm going to pay you $1,000 option fee to buy it. And let's just say at $500 a month, let's just say that house is probably worth $75K. All right. That's what we just talked about when we talked about the lease option. Okay. When we talked about the lease option, she's going to rent the property from him. She's going to rent it for $500 a month from him. She's paying him a fee of $1,000 in order to buy it later on in a year for $75,000. Okay. That's what she's doing. That's the agreement for him. Why would he want to do that? Well, maybe it's set open for a while. Maybe he's just tired of maintaining it. Maybe he knows that when somebody does a lease option, they are going to be the owners of the house. They're not going to be the owners of the house, but they're going to be the owners one day. So they treat it like their house. So they treat it better. He can pass off all his maintenance costs off to her. She's good. She's going to take care of it. Basically, she's making his headache go away, and he's making money, right? All right. So now here's what the savvy investor does. The savvy investor says, well, you know what? I already have a nice house that I like. It may not be a mansion, but it's great for me, and I love my backyard. And so I'm going to help somebody else out. Enter our family. Okay. Our family now, Miss Single Mom with her little boy. Whole life shook upside down. Doesn't know what she's going to do, but she knows she can't stay in the house she was in because it got sold out from under her, and somehow she didn't get no money. Right? So now she's trying to figure out how to adjust to life. This is where the win-win-win comes in. Those of you who are new to me and my body of work, one of the things that I like is a win-win-win. I like there to be abundance for everybody. So everybody wins with generational wealth empowerment and generational land ownership. All right. So family comes along. She doesn't know what she's going to do. She's been working hard and working hard. Year 2, working hard, working hard. Year 3, working hard, working hard. Still doesn't have enough money saved up to buy a house. Can't even put the 3% down for an FHA loan. She is like at her wit's end. How am I going to make a better life for me and my boy? It's not our fault we're in this position, but I have to do. It's my responsibility. It's not my fault, but it's my responsibility. What am I going to do? Enter our investor who advertises to help families rebuild their lives, right? And so she's going to tell this lady, tell this lady, you know what? I've got a perfect house for you. It's a cute little house. It's got enough room for you and your boy. He can have a little backyard where he can play, and you can have a little office where you can start your side hustle. And I'm going to only charge you because I can see that you're a hard worker, and I can see from your finances, you got a lot of things to clean up, but you've paid your bills on time, every time for the last year. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to let you lease option this house. And so what's going to happen now is this family is going to lease option this house for $750 a month. Okay. That's the rent that they're paying, the lease money that they're paying. They are also, because she does have a little bit of savings, she's also going to pay a $2,000 option fee to buy this house in a year, because she's been working hard for the last 2 years, and she thinks she's going to be able to get her credit to where she needs to be able to get a mortgage. $2,000 to buy this house in a year, and the price she's going to agree to is going to be $85K, because the prices are going up, or because she's just so happy to get a house. Whatever the reason, it's not too unreasonable. The investor got it at a good enough discount where she can still do market rate and make some money. But now look at this spread. Is this lady getting a good deal? She's getting a good deal. She's being able to rebuild her life. She's being able to buy. She's have the promise of being able to buy a house for her and her son that's going to be theirs forever. And she's going to be able to do it even though the banks turn her down because of all of her issues that she's trying to clean up. But the investor sees that she's working hard, and they make this agreement. Well, it's a win-win-win. The Mr. Owner loses his headache, gets some cash. The family gets some money. Gets a property that they'll one day be able to call their own home. And the investor is now making the spread in between what she paid him and what they're paying her. So that's $250 a month plus an extra $1,000. Can you put a deal together like that? Can you put together a deal like that where you don't even have to buy the house? You don't even have to do any maintenance. All you got to do is put two people together. One owner that has a headache of a property and just can't stand it anymore, and another person who's willing to fix it up with their own sweat, labor, and tears, and willing to go to Home Depot and take those classes on how to lay your own tile so they can have their own house. Can you put those people together? I bet you could put those people together and make that spread. Anybody can use these techniques to not only buy their own property, but be able to profit from the property. And that's when your property becomes an investment, it becomes something that is making you money. I want you to catch this because it's a very, very powerful principle. A very powerful principle for helping people be able to change their lives while you're changing your lives. And for those of you who didn't make it to the earlier session, we walked through The Spirit of Opulence by Thomas Troward, where he defines opulence of being that generous mind. That large, generous mind that understands that our wealth and everything is not just something to be sought after for itself, but it's something to circulate and flow. This is how you create circulation and flow in your communities. This is how you create, those of you who have something, this is how you create pathways to home ownership in your communities without harming yourself. See, too many of us who have gotten somewhere, we end up siphoning away our wealth out of obligation, feeling like we need to do something to help the community, but then we do it at a cost to us. That's not abundance. That's obligation. And what I'm showing you today is a way to not only elevate yourself, but also be able to elevate the lives of others while adding to your generations, while adding to your legacy. All right. So this is what's called this is called a lease option sandwich. Okay. And you can do this kind of thing with any kind of property. You can do this with any kind of property. Okay. And the investor is taking on an obligation to buy the property later, but the investor is not taking on debt. So that's one of the reasons I like stuff like this, because you can make money with real estate. You don't even own it. You're not going in any debt. Now I've also taught about wholesaling, but that's not the subject of this. That's another way to make money with real estate without going in any debt. But the investor herself has not gone into any debt. The investor herself has only got the option to buy the property, not the obligation to buy the property. And if this family doesn't clean up their act in time to buy the house in a year, then one of two things happens. They redo the process again. She pays the owner another option fee for another year, and the family pays her another option fee for another year. Okay. Or they all walk away from the deal. And see, what we do is we look at that and we say, well, I want more than 200 a month. Or some of these deals, you can make a couple thousand a month in the spread, depending on the market you're in, some high end markets. Well, I want more. I want the big chunks. I want to do one deal that's going to make me big money right off the bat. And it's going to change my life. Because, I saw the commercials, and the commercial said that I could have no experience and I could go out and make $100,000 off my first deal. I got a whole lot to say on that, because most of those people that do those kinds of deals where they make 80,000, 100,000, 150,000 on their first deal, they are not no experience. They may not have ever done a real estate flip before or a real estate deal before, but they got some experience in the industry. When you dig into it, most of them do. I haven't met one that doesn't. But what I want you to understand today is the power of consistency. It's the compounding power of consistency. See, the people who are chasing after this one huge big deal may or may not ever get that deal, but you can put together these kind of deals all day long. If you're willing to do the research, you can put together these kinds of deals, and you can 250 can stack on another 250, can stack on another 250, can stack on another 250, and another 1,000 upon another 1,000 upon another 1,000. And it doesn't take very long. You only need, I want you to think about this. This is a low end market. In most markets where I operate, you're making a minimum spread of 500 to 1,000. How many extra thousands a month do you need to be able to breathe easy? How many extra thousands a month do you need coming in consistently because somebody is so happy they can buy a house for them and their family now, and they're not going to give that house up? How many of those do you need before you can build a legacy for you and your son? How much does it take for you to be able to send your kids to college without them having to go into debt? So they can start off like all the other kids who go to college, and they can start investing when they get that good job instead of spending 10, 20 years paying off debt. It doesn't take that much, but it does take some. And these kinds of things, you are now putting processes in place that do good without harming you. See, we chase after all these big, grandiose things, and we neglect the consistency of the everyday little things that add up to big successes. Okay. And so this is a very powerful technique. For those of you who want more information, you can certainly go to rei.com and you can get my class on how to dig into this even more. Okay. But that's a lease option combined, kind of combined with the tech. That is lease option combined together. Now you can do this, the same kind of a sandwich thing. You can do the same kind of a sandwich thing with an owner finance if you find a property that's undervalued. And I'm going to give you an example from my own life. It didn't work out this way because we took too long to squibble squabble about who was in charge or not. But when my father passed away, he had a property that was over leveraged. And had we not taken so long trying to recover from the grief and, deal with all the who's going to be in charge, who's going to be executor and all this stuff, had we not taken so long to do that, we could have sold the property to an investor who would have put enough down to allow us to take that down payment and go do the legal stuff to get everything named and do what we have to do. And then they could have taken ownership of that property, and then they could have owner financed it to somebody else. You can actually owner finance a property that you haven't even bought yet. So now let's change the picture up a little bit. Okay. Let's say in a year, she does go ahead and buy the property from the owner for the $75K. Because she likes this person and she knows this person will pay more. And so now she's ready to sell it as an owner finance. Now you can do the same technique. You can actually owner finance anything that you own, even if you already have a mortgage against it. Now, some mortgages, they're not going to want you to do that. And I know my loan professionals who are watching like, ooh, JJ, don't talk about that. But as long as they're getting paid, most of the time, they're not going to be upset. But in our case, with my dad's house, we could have sold that to an investor who would have made those payments and then put another owner in it. And they would have sandwiched the ownership. Okay. This would have been an owner finance property, even though it had an underlying mortgage. And so this would be an excellent strategy, again, for somebody who can't seem to get their own property through traditional methods. Now, of course, you do want to do your research and you want to put protections in place, because you could pay somebody through an owner finance. If they don't own that property free and clear and they mess up, you could end up on the street. And we don't want that. We want to empower you, not devour you. Oh, that's a good one. Somebody needs to drop that into the chat. We want to be empowered, not devoured. Now that's going to be another one of my quotes. Hey, we going to put that. Look at that. The flowing today. We talked about flow this morning. All right. Now, the last thing that I want to talk to you about, is in our creative financing strategy. This is my new favorite. This is what I'm working on right now with several properties, and it's called Subject To. Now, we touched on this a little bit in the last month's Building Wealth Together meeting, and we had people come in and ask questions about, hey, I'm going to buy this house. Can I get the owner to do this or the owner to do that? I'm going to be upfront with you and explain that these creative strategies that I'm talking about, especially Subject To, these aren't the ones where you pick out the house in a catalog and you get just the perfect house. And now all of a sudden you're going to get these people to work all these creative things on your behalf. Sometimes it works that way. I haven't seen it work that way yet. All right. Now you may find a perfect property that the owner is willing to finance, but it's already going to be predetermined. Okay. You're not just going to go into MLS and pick a property and say, you know what? I'm not going to go to the bank. I want you to take a note. That usually doesn't work. But if you are patient and if you are open Remember, we talked about being open. You're patient, you're open. You would be surprised at what comes to you. Okay. And so, as I tee up this concept, let me explain what subject to means. Okay. Subject to, which is often written as SUB, the number 2, means you're taking a property subject to the loan, subject to the underlying mortgage. Okay. And most mortgage companies are going to have what's called a due on sale clause, which says if you sell the property, you got to get them paid off before you can release the property, right? It's going to say something like that. But most companies that I'm aware of actually have not enforced that as long as they're getting paid, okay? And so what I'm trying to pull up for you is I'm trying to pull up for you the properties, some of these properties that we have done that you could get subject to. And let me see. Where's the church? I just had it. Okay. So let's pull that one up. Oh, oops, wrong screen. I need the photo view. Okay. Open with. So you can use this technique for all kinds of properties. You can use this technique with residential properties. Okay. You can use this technique with residential properties. All right. Let me get me out of there. You can use this. You can, that's not it. That one is definitely not a subject to. Wrong one. Okay. You can use this with office condos. Oh, wait, could you guys see that? Y'all couldn't see it, could you? Hold on. Let me add that to stream. Thank you for letting me know. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. Let's pull that back up. View. You can use this with residential properties. So let's grab that guy. Okay. You can use this with residential properties. All right. You can use this with subject to with any kind of land. You can use subject to with office condos. So, for example, in this situation, why don't I have the whole thing? Isn't that interesting? Okay. You can use it with office condos. So let me open this up for you. I know I should have already had this up, but I wasn't actually going to show you guys these, but I want you guys to be inspired. I was like, I should just show them some of these properties. Pictures. You can use them with all kinds of different things. Okay, I don't know why this isn't connecting. So I'm trying to show you guys the last one. I guess I already pulled it off of here. The last one we did this on was a church. And maybe I need to go to Facebook and pull it up for you that way. Hold on. All right. So the last one that we did this technique with was a church in Blanchard. And it's a 5,000 square foot. Let me pull that out so you can see it. 5,000 square foot facility. And all they wanted was for us to take over the payments. And they only had 4 years left. So let me bring that up for you. Share. Oop. And the reason this is so powerful is because, again, it's creating a win-win-win. Okay. And so when you have these kinds of things where somebody has a property that they need to unload, you want to come in and help them. And what you're doing is you're taking over the loan. In subject to, you are taking over their loan. You're not taking the loan to your name. You're taking over their payments. Maybe that's a better way for me to say it. So you are buying the property. Your name goes on the deed to the property. You are filing that deed at the courthouse. Okay. You are taking over the payments. There's a way that you do this. A lot of times I might recommend that you put the property into a land trust or something like that just for protection's sake, but you are taking this property, you are paying their loan. You are not taking a new loan, you are simply paying off their loan. And so there are legal parameters that are going to say you shouldn't do that, because as soon as they sell the property to you, you have to pay off the loan in full, but that's not very often enforced as long as the bank is getting their money. Now, ideally, you want to get to a point where you might refinance them off or pay them off and get them off the loan. But when you do this, what you're now doing is you're helping somebody who, for whatever reason, is struggling to make their payments, or they're struggling to maintain a property, which is what was happening here. They were making their payments, but they were getting older, they were farther away, and they couldn't really get up there to take care of the property. And it did need a fair amount of work to be put back into use. And so for them, it was a win-win-win. A win for them because now somebody else can take over the payments, and somebody else takes over the use of the facility, and somebody else is putting the facility they worked so hard for into the community use. For us, it would have been a win for us. I mean, we actually ended up not doing the deal. We walked through it and then passed it off to one of my mentors. But because I moved to Texas. So some of y'all saw my videos. You can actually go back on my Facebook page and you can see the videos where we started this, and we were actually fixing it up for about 2 months. And, but then we made the decision to move. So we ended up not going through with it, but this was a 5,000 square foot facility, and it only needed maybe $30,000 worth left on it. And you say, why would somebody do that? Why wouldn't they try to sell it? Well, it needed some work and it needed some sprucing up. And even though the work was stuff we could have done, the work was a little scary to some people, but it wasn't scary to us because we knew how to do it. You know what I'm saying? We knew how to redo the floor, and we knew how to replace the things that had rotted out on the top, and we could see that the roof had been repaired, and we could see that there were things that we could work with, and we were confident in that. And so we were going to be able to do that. And the investor that ended up taking the property, he was able to do those things at a far less cost and resources than the people who owned it, who were an hour away, would have been able to do it, and who were getting up in age were able to do. And so these are how you create win-win-win solutions. Okay. And so with this, let's go back to it. With this particular property, was I willing to take over somebody's payment? Yeah, absolutely. Come on now. I'm going to take over the payment, and then we're going to have a building. Plus, y'all know I was looking for a church building anyway. And that's funny because so many wholesalers are like, JJ, we found you a church. And it's funny because when they first found it, it was like, oh, they wanted 75,000 for it, and then they wanted 50,000 for it, and then they were like, would you just take over our payments? And we're like, I can handle that. I didn't have 75,000 at the time because our ministry was starting, right? And we had we had 2 tornadoes, and then Sears, their first year we were there, Sears water main burst and flooded our church in the mall. And then the next year we had a tornado and it took out our HVAC. And the next year we had a tornado that took out our HVAC. Like we just couldn't get a break in that mall, right? Like the mall staff was amazing, but being there, we never saved up enough because we kept having to clean up. And so, yeah, I'll take over your payments. But this is called subject to. And the way it works is, again, you find somebody who is looking for unloading. They're looking for breathing room. They're looking for space, and you take over their payments, and you do it in a way that helps them improve their credit, because now you're taking over their payments and you're paying consistently. And then you are able to put that property into use. You can execute the same kinds of strategies that we talked about with the lease option. You can turn around and rent these properties out. You can turn around and do whatever you want. A very popular technique in Louisiana for people who buy these properties, and I'm sure many other states, is to put a lease option renter in them. In Texas, like I mentioned, lease option, you only can get 6 months. So a lot of times people in Texas will actually do an owner finance. See how these creative strategies kind of stack one on another, right? It's very, very flexible and fluid once you understand how they work. Okay. And so you can take the house. Do I still have that house? Where did I put it? Oops. You can take the house. You're buying it subject to. So you're buying the house. You're paying the payments to the bank. The house is in your name. The bank loan is still in their name. You are taking the house. You are paying the payments to the bank. You are now selling that house or lease optioning that house to somebody else. They are able to elevate their lives. You are able to elevate your lives. And the original owner whose loan you're paying off is able to elevate their lives. It's the ultimate win-win-win. Now, before we close out this portion and before we bring our Juneteenth panel on, one of the things that I want to mention about any of these creative real estate strategies is you do not want to just go and do all this stuff on your own. You want to seek out experienced investors who will mentor you. And you might say, well, JJ, why would somebody want to train their competition? I told you all in the beginning of this segment, I was never very good at wholesaling. I am better at it now. I'm comfortable doing it now. But back in the day when I first started teaching this, I was simply hoping that more people would find me houses because I had my first little $3,000 house that's been, rented for $900 a month for the last 6 years, and I liked how that worked. And I wanted more of those houses, and I wanted people out there finding them for me. And then I discovered it made me a lot of money to teach people how to make themselves a lot of money. So it was a win-win, right? But I at that time I wasn't as good. It was actually pretty bad. I was pretty bad at it. I'm so much better now, more confident now, and I know what I'm doing now. But back then I was just like, and so the reason a lot of people teach others how to do these things is to improve their own access to quality, low-priced properties. Okay. And then the other thing is, like we were talking about in the first segment, with this spirit of opulence and the spirit of living largely and being generous, when we look at ourselves as a river, not a reservoir, now money, talent, abundance flows to and through us. And it's always in circulation, always moving, and always something coming back to us. And so when you find the right group of real estate investors, they will help educate you and help you take your business along with their business to the next level. So there's several ways to find these groups. They are called Real Estate Investor Associations, REIA, or Real Estate Investor Groups, REIG. You can do a search for REIA or REIG in your location. Now, I have my favorites. If you're in Louisiana, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas, if you're back where I used to live in Virginia or where I used to live in Maryland, especially in the Baltimore or Prince George's County areas, I definitely have recommendations for you of very good quality real estate investment groups or associations where you can go and learn and be mentored by other investors who've actually done the thing. That is going to lead me to the final point that I want to make when it comes to generational wealth building, generational land ownership. Too many of us either see something on TV, or we read about something, or we get this idea and we want to go do it ourselves because we have this scarcity mindset that there's not enough for everybody. And because we really believe deep down inside that there's not enough for everybody, we are opposed to really sharing and opening, because many of us come from a background where if you share an idea with somebody, they're going to take it. Right? Like I've had 4 or 5 really good one-liners in this call already that anybody who's on this call can go take and make their own and start using them. That's the risk of doing business. However, none of us on our own can go as far as all of us can go as we are working together. You can go far and you can be successful, but you're going to go further and be more successful and keep more of what you earn when you get the collective advice of people who have been there and done that. And too many of us, myself included, before I came into these principles, do not have enough people who've been there and done that in our lives. Oh, we have people who live large. We have people that flash the cars and they flash the handbags and they wear the shoes and their makeup is on point and everything is on fleek. I get that. But what we don't have a whole lot of in our lives are people who've actually done the thing. They're actually walking in the abundance. They're actually able to pay the single mom's water bill for a year and give her a break, or they're able to create the scholarship endowment fund, or they're able to do this or that. See, we've been buying into this bill of goods that the facade is all where it's at. Now, don't get me wrong. The facade makes it easier for people to want to be attracted to what you want to say. I get that. But at the end of the day, there's got to be some substance. Because if there's no substance, there's nothing to build a generational legacy upon. I want to encourage you, if you are interested in real estate investing, to find yourself in a group of like-minded individuals, which you can generally find at a real estate investment association or a real estate investment group. You're going to want to look for ones that focus on education. Some of them do have a cost. I mean, just about all of them that I know that are good have a cost. but I will say that you get a lot for the cost when you find the right groups. What you get when you find the right groups is you get people who are willing to mentor and have informational sessions and teaching sessions outside of the main real estate meeting where they're selling a product. And that way you can learn and grow. You can develop relationships with mentors who will lead you and teach you, not necessarily take all your money, but will lead you and teach you. Okay. All right. So with that, we're going to kind of shift gears. Do I have any other questions about home ownership, creative financing? I really do hope that you have enjoyed this discussion of these creative financing strategies that you can not only use to build to attain your own home ownership, but that you can use to start real estate investing without having to go into debt. You can use these strategies to build up funds to fund your dreams, to fund your art, to fund your community activities, or even fund your next property and your investment portfolio. All right. I'm JJ Conway, and that will conclude this portion. Give me a second as we prepare for our panel. I have one of my panelist members on. I am expecting two more to be on, but we're going to have a discussion. If she doesn't mind, I'd like to have, while we're waiting for others to get in, I'd like to have a discussion about what we've discussed, because I know that this lady right here is a diva when it comes to real estate. All right. Miss Sabrina, are you there? Let me go ahead and get you in here today. Happy Juneteenth, my sister.
Hey, happy Juneteenth.
I'm so excited. I'm so tickled. It's a holiday now.
I said the same thing.
Well, I know that I like most, like I'm mixed race, so half my family is white, and I'm sure the white half does not get it. But but I'm just like, this is big. This is so big for me.
It is absolutely an honor to share this day and this occasion with you, JJ. Thank you so much for just allowing me to bless your platform. As always, you look fabulous, darling. I appreciate you so, so very much. And I have thoroughly enjoyed the Hour of Power conversation about land ownership. My name is Sabrina Lowry. They call me the tech evangelist, and I am a realtor, 18 years in my business, the qualifying broker and owner of Legacy Realty and Management, LLC, here in Atlanta. And we are specialized as an investor-friendly brokerage firm because half of our book of business is in property management. So those landowners and homeowners that you were talking about, they're some of my longest standing clients. As a matter of fact, my longest property management contract has been renewed since 2010. And I know this to be true because I was still pregnant with Caleb, and he'll be 11 on Tuesday.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. And those long-term relationships, that's really where it at. We've got to look. Now, don't get me wrong. Those quick hits of money from wholesaling and flipping, that's if that's where we're at, that's where we're at. But the strategic long term,
That's right.
that's where we start to really see the wealth of our generations improve. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, we are expecting two more folks to come into our panel. But since we have the tech evangelist who is also a real estate diva on the line, I just want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about some of the things that people don't realize they could be doing right now to move the needle forward for generational wealth building.
Oh, this is one of my favorites because being investor friendly as a broker, my business partners are investors. So they believe in it already. I don't have to fix the mindset first. And you know how important that is, JJ. And
Yep.
so what I do when I partner with investors is I teach them not only how to manage their portfolio, but how to profit year over year. So let's talk about the accidental landlord versus the intentional landlord who sees the business for the
Yes.
business, right? So I speak a lot to that. I've written a CE class to that point, and the class is called Act Like a Landlord, Think Like an Investor. It's a mindset, right? So your actions as a landlord is to rent your property, maintain its quality of living, and then collect that rental income year over year. Let's talk about the investor. The investor goes into it without emotion, with money for the return on investment, the ROI. That's all they're focused on from day one, right? The numbers got to work. The numbers got to work. The numbers got to work. I'll say it again. The numbers got to work. It's called an investment, right? That's just like stocks. You look at the stock market because why? You're looking for growth and gain on your money. And to JJ's point, real estate is one of the fastest ways to increase wealth and gain profitability year over year with land ownership, home ownership. I'll give you a quick little tip for those of y'all that want to understand why my class that I teach is called Act Like a Landlord, Think Like an Investor, is because now when you think like an investor, that means you started with a written business plan. I am big on written planning. I'm a planner. In writing means you've listened to yourself, you thought about it, and then the writing, that's 2 steps in. Now it's time to take action. You're going to create a brand new business. This business model is going to be what? Am I fixing and flipping? Am I buying and holding? Or what is my investment strategy? So those are conversations we have day one as part of the consultation because I need to know your goals. Are you looking for short-term money or long-term money? That's another question. Now, how much investment and risk are you willing to spend and take? Those are important questions. And then lastly, do you want to be a landlord, meaning you're responsible for the repairs and maintenance on top of the insurance and taxes? Or are you kind of the hands-off approach where all I want is a direct deposit in my bank by the 15th of the month, darling? I have those clients too, JJ, and they are extremely hands-off, which makes me the landlord while they are the investor. I hope y'all just picked up that nugget I just put down, right? And so whether you're a silent investor, an active investor, the investment of real estate is always going to profit you for a long term. That is the business of real estate investing. And so I am here to promote generational wealth. I am here to promote home ownership. For those of y'all that did not know, June is National Home Ownership Month, and I stand proudly as a Realtor member with the National Association of Realtors, who has now been selected as a two-time national speaker for our NAR annual conference and expo happening November 12th through 15th in San Diego, California. And yours truly will be there rocking the mic on Friday, November 12th at 3 p.m. So don't miss the opportunity to be blessed by those things that I have to share with you. JJ?
Oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. I didn't know that June was home ownership month, but that makes it even more poignant that we're doing this. And congratulations on being selected for, I mean, all of these accolades and opportunities. You know, they're coming because you are bringing the value. And that's what we were talking about today. You know, some people feel like, well, it takes money to make money. So I ain't got no money, so I can't do anything. No, you got something to give.
That's right.
And when you start giving, it starts coming.
Absolutely.
Woo!
That's right. You know I'm a giver, JJ. The first time we met, I blessed you. The
Yes, you
second
did.
time we met, I blessed you and your people on the platform, right?
Yes, you
And so
did.
today I am here once again for you to be a blessing to you and your people.
And you already have been. Oh my goodness. And so I want to talk also about a little bit more about this whole thing of, you know, moving forward. We
Yeah.
talked Thursday. I don't know if you had a chance to catch it, because I know you were doing so much yourself, and you have so much of the same messages. But Thursday, one of the lessons that I taught was about fear, and how a lot of times we see fear and we say, oh, that means we have to stop. But really what fear is saying is, be cautious. You're entering new ground. You need to be more aware than you maybe have been. But that doesn't mean you just stop and run away from the opportunities.
Yeah.
And so I love how you were saying there's this spectrum.
Yes.
There's this spectrum when it comes to real estate and property management. Some people are more hands-on. They might bring you in just to help them find somebody. Or some people are like, I'm going to set it and forget it and let her be the landlord.
That's right. That's
and,
right.
and there's no one right way. So if somebody is afraid today, can you encourage them to take that next step?
Absolutely.
I like to think I have, but you know how it is. It's always good to hear it from somebody else.
So can I take it back to biblical, which I know you can appreciate, Pastor JJ? So as the tech evangelist, I do evangelize sometimes. So I think this is a poignant moment for us to do that and bless the people, right?
All right, all right.
So there is something called servant leadership. As a servant leader, we are doing God's work for God's people. And what you have to do is do it with someone else. Being stuck in your fear is going to cripple you. So let's think about this. Do you realize how the call to altar during worship service is always about each one, teach one, bring one, JJ, right? And so if you are being called to the altar, isn't there typically somebody going to walk up to that altar with you to receive your blessing? And so if you are afraid, ask for what you need. Whether it be the higher calling spirit that is giving you what you need, or you are physically locking arms with another individual to get on the other side of fear, JJ. I cannot tell you how many of my investors worry when the rent payment is not there on time. There's another service call coming through. I will tell you a true testimonial. One of my past investor clients who was an accidental landlord. Remember, we talked about the intentional one versus the one that just has to move and they need somebody to rent their house to pay the mortgage, kind of accidental landlord. This young lady told me when I finally got her property sold after managing it for 5 years, Sabrina, every time I received a text message from you or saw your name on my caller ID, I would almost have a panic attack. Like, what is it now?
I've been there. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness, JJ. And so why have that fear? I was like, so and so, you know, I'm not that person that's going to always bear bad news, right? I may just be calling to check on you and make sure you got your rent money that month. So to have that level of anxiety in your real estate world, your investment business, your wealth building, it's the risk of it all, but it's how you wear it. How does it manifest itself in your life? For her, it was anxiety. Every time she sees my name on the caller ID or text, she's like, what is it now? I did not want her to have that feeling for the rest of her life. When we sat at the closing table and she signed those papers at the settlement, do you know I told her, the next time I call you, I hope it brings you a smile and you will have the memory of this day that I was the one that walked with you every step of the way.
Yes, yes, yes. And this is such a poignant story because I remember being that investor when I first launched into my own property. So I had all this debt and I paid off so much debt. And then I got into real estate investing and teaching people. And I decided to take, I forget where the money actually came from, but this money came and I said, well, normally I would throw this at debt, but I have this opportunity to buy this $3,000 house in Baltimore. And if it's the Lord, it's going to work out. And those first 2 years, it seemed like every time that property manager called, this was broken, that was broken, sewage was bubbling up in the backyard, the lead cert for Baltimore. I mean, just everything. And it was just like, no wonder the house was so cheap.
Yes.
But it was actually a really good house. It was just been under neglect for so long. And so we got some things fixed, but then I realized it was a reflection of the mindset of everything else that was going on in my life. Because it wasn't just the property manager. Mm-hmm. It was the engine light on my car. Mm. The engine light would come on in the car and I'd be like, oh no, how much is this going to cost me?
Right.
You know, and then the other day, the engine light came on. I said, oh, I get to go buy me a new car.
Hello.
but when you're strapped down and you're pressed together and everything is a struggle and you've been struggling for so long, even when things start to get better, your mindset is still strapped in the struggle. Oh, y'all, that's another one today. I'm on fire today. We got to stop being strapped in the struggle and we need to break forth and enjoy our breakthrough. My, because we've been living constrained and in poverty for so long and we finally break free, but we don't feel free. Right. Do you see that? Do you see that with some of your homeowners?
Oh, yes, all the time. And so the thing about that, JJ, again, how do you manage that? It's an emotional management, right? Right? It is. And trust me when I tell you, mental health wellness is real. And if it just takes you to the point of being stuck, how can you move forward? How can you make an executive business decision at that point? You can't think from left to right. And it just makes me think about when there's a loss, when there's a death, right? You know that funeral home directors manage the most stressful people in the most stressful time. And when I tell you, I've witnessed several funeral directors and how they manage their operation. When people are in their worst mental condition and state to process information, make decisions, and spend money.
Oh, my.
I'm talking about a lot of money. To bury someone costs money. Listen, y'all, that's actually part of the generational wealth plan too. I need y'all to write that down. Somebody's mama didn't tell them that there is a plan for death. And a plan for death means you've got some kind of understanding about burial costs. Did you know the average funeral, if you want a casket, is about $10,000 and up, depending on
Hand up.
how lavish you want that box to be? And then cremation services. Let's talk about that. That's still gonna run you $1,000 or so, because now you got a whole service and the service of, right? So generational wealth and planning is planning now for that legacy after the loss.
Yes, yes. And not just, oh, well, I'm going to have insurance
That's
and,
right.
and because you don't know what kind of complexities are going to happen. For one, too many people let their insurance lapse, and that's a whole nother discussion, right? Too many people let their insurance lapse at the end because they're older and they need the money for something else on fixed income or what have you. But then, my friend, her husband recently passed away, and it took them so long to determine. They had to do an autopsy because the issues around surrounding his death. It took her weeks, almost 2 months, to get the death certificate. So you can't get access to all these different insurance monies and benefits and all that. You got to have a plan, and we know it's going to happen. So
That's
do
right.
you have a plan?
That's right.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yes, sweetheart. Listen, I truly am a believer and a doer of generational wealth, hence the name of my business, Legacy Realty. You understand? I have been so intentional over these 18 years, 3 sons, a husband. I absolutely will not leave them troubled.
Yes.
I will leave them in peace and prosperity.
Yes.
That is building generational wealth that my legacy will then carry on because of the residuals of things like best-selling books, because of home ownership. My house value has doubled, baby, since we've been here. And so, I look at retirement a little bit different because
That's right.
I've done the work, made the payments, kept the house maintained, and I absolutely love watching that wealth increase, y'all.
That's right. That's right. And so it's so amazing when you shift from this scarcity, there's not enough for everybody, but when you shift to an abundance, oh, there's so much more out there. And if this runs out, we'll make more, and it's such a difference in mindset to where if you really believe that all this abundance is coming to you, you would prepare now. It's like people talking about reparations, and this is not going to be a debate about reparations. Okay. So I just want to assure everybody. And, that we had somebody who was supposed to be in the panel that kind of wanted to talk a little bit, and I was going to let him yay, it's Juneteenth, we're gonna have a conversation, but he didn't show up. So there was 2 more, and neither one of them are here. And I sent out a reminder. So I think the people needed to be encouraged by us today.
That's right.
Because I believe that the people who need to show up will show up.
That's right.
All right. And
Every time.
And so when we think about these mindsets, and when people tell me about all these things that they want to push for and all these things they want to argue for, and I'm like, okay, but have you taught your children what to do with that reparation if they get it?
Right.
Have you learned how to manage wealth if you get it?
That's right.
How many of these lands that were granted to our foremothers and our forefathers when they stopped being slaves, how many of these lands are being sold off here and there by cousins of cousins and brothers of brothers who just want a quick $5,000 when the land is really worth like 100,000, because somebody knows if they dangle a few notes in front of our face, we'll just sell it off because we're living right now. We're not living strategically. And so I feel like when this is something that I've been big on this year, faith is the substance of things hoped for.
Absolutely.
If you really have faith, there will be substance that comes through your faith. That substance is the learning how to manage the money you expect to come. That substance is building the networks to help you. You may not feel comfortable with real estate now, but can you find you somebody like Sabrina Can you find somebody like Sabrina to be on your team and help you so that when you're ready to move forward, you got somebody who's got your back?
That's right.
Can you start building those relationships now? Of course you can start building those relationships now. And the other day I was traveling cross country. I'm so excited that in-person speaking engagements are back. I was traveling cross country and I started doing calculations. I said, well, I really want to have this retreat ranch.
Okay.
And I want to be able to walk around my property. Well, how much do I walk? Well, in the mornings I walk 3 miles. So I probably want to have a 5-mile radius so that I can get a good walk in on good days. And then I calculated how many acres that was, and it was like 1,800 or something acres. I said, oh, I don't want to have to maintain all that land. What about a 3K? What about 3 miles? What about a 5K? Because that's what I do in the morning. I do 3 miles. Oh, okay. So that's about 512 acres. I can handle 5, because in my mind, the number I was thinking was between 500 and 600 to execute the vision that I feel like has been given to me to create this retreat ranch, this therapeutic ranch, and this place where people can come and set aside their limiting beliefs and learn how to build wealth and overcome the PTSD and all these different things. I mean, I got the vision. It is so big. But I'm sitting there and I'm doing this. And then I start laughing at myself, like, why on earth am I calculating acreage? And then I thought, well, I don't want to mow all that land. How do you even manage all that land? Like, these thoughts are coming to me while I'm traveling. And I'm chuckling at my own self. And then it hits me. This is your faith turning into substance.
That's right.
Because you really believe it. So now you're starting to research it. And it's not here yet. But just because I'm holding the thought and I'm holding the desire, all the machinations that need to happen in the world are happening to bring it to me, including my own actions, my own faith becoming substance of the thing that I hope for. Because now I'm like, well, how do people who have these big ranches? I mean, because you're a realtor. I don't know what the rules are in Georgia, but I know in Maryland, I think it's like 15 years, and I think Virginia might even be less than that. If they traipse through your land or squat on your land for so long, it becomes theirs. If you don't stop them,
15, sweetheart. Yeah, because I've actually had renters do that and ask me for consult on how to make that their property.
Yeah, because it's law, and I'm like, who would put that law in the book? Somebody who knows a lot of people don't know how to read and pay attention.
That is correct.
And so I'm sitting there, I'm doing this, and I'm like, okay, well, how do you manage that much land? And then I started, as we're driving through Texas, and I'm like, okay, look at this ranch and look at that ranch. What are they doing? And who do I need to meet? And it's the faith becoming substance. If you really believe that you're going to walk in wealth, you believe that your side hustle is going to be a multi-million-dollar international business, now is the time to start laying that foundation.
Yes, it is.
And now is the time to start teaching your future generations to think strategically.
Yes, it is.
Because we worked too hard. We struggled too much. We had too many people slam the door in our face. And now it's our time.
It is our time.
Woo!
It is absolutely our time. It is the time is now. Okay, so that is something that our pastor preaches as soon as he comes on every Sunday. Arise. Our time is now.
Yes.
Arise. Your time is now. Arise. Our time is now. And I love that. As soon as he greets the ministry, it is those words that he declares out to us. And I think that is powerful because it is. Y'all, God sat everybody down for the COVID. Okay, starting in 2019. We are now in 2021, about to start the third quarter. Come on now. It's like a football game. There are 4 quarters, right? We got to make sure after the halftime that you done reassessed and reevaluated those things that did not bear fruit from the seeds you've sown. It may just be time to plant some more seeds. Now, I get excited about sowing seeds because I am a gardener and I love to watch my garden grow. But if I don't water it and nurture it, and then harvest when the abundance is there, God is not going to continue to produce the fruits of my labor.
Oh, I think you might need to say that again.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Takesha. Takitha, pardon me, sis. It is. So those, first of all, seeds you don't sow won't reap any harvest.
Oh, 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 oh.
Okay, so that's first of all, because there's some folks that think gardening is a hobby. Y'all better pick up these nuggets I'm putting down. So, what I'm saying is, when you sow a seed, it will bear fruit. It is going to produce a seedling. The baby seedling is so delicate. If you mismanage that seedling at that point of growth, it will die. Now, have I ruined a few plants in my life? Yes, I have. Have I planted some seeds that never grew anything? Yes, I have. But when I talk about sowing seeds in land ownership, acquiring real estate, y'all look, my post-it is real. It's right here because my post-it is all battered and beaten. But do y'all see what that says?
Yes.
Purchase a commercial building. Like,
Oh,
it's
I love
intentional.
it.
I'm not playing these games with the people because they need to understand I lead by example. That's what servant leaders do. They walk the
Yes.
walk and we talk the talk.
You got to visualize it. You got to see it and you got to do it. And I want to go back to that point that you just, I know I'm like, people laugh at me because they do all the big vision boards and stuff. I'm like, you know what? This is right here.
It's
I see
right
it.
here.
I can take it with me when I travel. It's right there all the time. One time I forgot I was traveling. So I took it and I stuck it in this little spot in my laptop and I forgot to take it and put it on my panel here.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm at what's it called? The tumbling where the little kids do the gymnastics.
Yes, yes,
and my
yes.
son, and so I'm watching my son and I'm prepping for my next class. And the lady sitting next to me, she's like, and I'm thinking, what the heck is wrong with this lady? I had forgotten I had my sticky there because I was so worried about getting my thing. And then as I'm packing up, I'm like, oh, well, I guess she just got some inspiration today.
Hello.
But you know, you got to do what you got to do. And,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
whatever works for you to keep you in the energy of that goal, that's what you got to do. And for me, the sticky note works. So, hey, let's go ahead and do this thing.
Look, Takitha, I don't play about my sticky pad, honey. Look.
Ooh!
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for it all. She said, let me go get my sticky note. That's it, honey.
That's right.
Ready. Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness. And then my son was on the money manifestation boot camp with John Tellerico and Les Brown last week. And I made him a sticky note. And I put it, I won't tell y'all what it says because I don't want to embarrass the young man on StreamYard, but I made him a sticky note and put it right there in the middle of the bathroom. I said, you know what? Not only are you going to get blessed by this affirmation, the whole family is going to get blessed by it because everybody sees that thing.
That's right. And look, it's probably to the best of that everybody sees that thing.
I've already seen a change. I was like, Lord, I should have done that a long time ago.
That's right.
Well, let me go back to a point that you mentioned earlier because you were comparing it to gardening and you were talking about sometimes you sow a seed that doesn't bear fruit.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there's all kinds of reasons a seed may not bear fruit. And sometimes it could be the environment that you're planting it in. I know for me, the environment I had planted myself in wasn't very good. But sometimes it's not that seed was meant to grow into your dream. It's that you were meant to take the action.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about taking action, because I think when we have this topic of generational empowerment, generational land ownership, generational wealth building, the foundation is this strategic thinking, this law of sowing and reaping. Mm-hmm. It's really the law of germination with the seed. You know, the seed is not an oak tree.
That's right.
But you plant it and you nurture it and you do what it needs done, and it takes in the sun and it takes in the nutrients from the soil and it grows.
That's right.
So how do we take action and move forward when most of the people, this is already giving you a hint to where I'm going with this. I'm going to see where you take it though, because every perspective adds value, right? All the people around you, nobody got a strategic thought. Nobody's thinking about tomorrow. Everybody's living in today. And maybe that's not been your experience, but that was mine when I started out. Like for me, it was everybody was living today, or it was a contrary mindset. Like whenever I said I was going to start getting healthier again, that would be when my ex-husband used to bring me donuts and candies.
Sabotage is the word.
Not even realizing that that's what they're doing, though.
Yes.
So
And
what do we do about that?
yes, so I want to tell you how I do it. I have to surround myself with those people. So
Yes.
I believe in circles, right? They almost say the 6 degrees of separation. And so in my world, I call them circles. And one of my circles is my sister circle. I've had this circle for over 20 years now. And we used to meet in person. And so, of course, the pandemic, we did virtual. Well, this year, I've been welcoming my circle back in person, and I'm doing it intentionally in my garden. So we've been meeting outside. We've had our prayer circle. We're sharing all of our goodness and greatness, and those that have problems speak to that too. And then guess what? I go into my teachable moments about how I sow seeds in my garden. And every time they come, there's a harvest. And the next time they come, they can't believe it's some more. I can't wait to bless my sisters back in the garden because I have an abundance, y'all, because it only took the faith of a mustard seed for me to know that I would produce a community garden. I said it years ago without even saying it. You know how you have those whispers, right? I will be an urban farmer. Well, what does urban farming look like, Lord? It looks like exactly what I'm doing right now.
Woo! Well, I love this. You have been such an encouragement, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us today. I mean, and you can see from the comments, people are getting blessed and lifted and encouraged, and that's what we're here for today. And I
Absolutely.
think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some space to let people know how they can reach out to you. And now we do have Clubhouse going, so make sure that it's that you let them know how they can get a hold of you as well, and then we will close out this portion of the talk. But you have just been a bright light. I want to thank and appreciate you for being on today, because you have just come in, and it's like one plants and another waters, and everything grows, and you have helped things to grow today. And wait until you see what we are doing for Juneteenth next year. I hope you will be a part. Let me sow that seed.
All right, sis. I cannot wait. I will be honored to partake. Everyone, my name is Sabrina Lowry, and I am the tech evangelist. You can connect with me across all social platforms. As a matter of fact, just Google me. I am a Google certified educator and trainer and a certified Microsoft innovative educator. I teach entrepreneurs how to take the stress out of tech, and through my services and my products, I help to empower, encourage, and edutain my people. Thank you all so much for having me today. Please go to sabrinalowry.com and follow me on Instagram and Clubhouse, to the Clubhouse listeners at Sabrina Lowry. Thank you so much, JJ.
Thank you for being here. And for those of you who are on the Facebook and Clubhouse, you're not going to be able to see it as well. So I encourage you to go out to facebook.com/DRJJ Conway. But we are going to say goodbye to Miss Sabrina, the tech evangelist, and we are going to move into a very special session for about 10-15 minutes that I call Another Seat at the Table. Goodbye, Sabrina. Thanks again for being with us.
Thank you.
All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to close out our Juneteenth celebration with something that's very, very special to me. Let me call up the slide here, because, I don't know about y'all, but I was in the Air Force for 23 years, right? And in those 23 years, I had to sit through so much diversity and proper treatment of women, and all these different trainings that from my perspective would help somebody like me, but they were presented in a way that actually alienated the rest of the team and made it such that people didn't want the training and made it such that people were resistant to the training. And so what I have here is something that was actually created by Josh Rich. It's a diversity and inclusion program called Another Seat at the Table. And I just want to walk you through a snippet, a very powerful snippet of this training. All right. Can I do that today? Can I do that today? All right. All right. Oh, okay. Let's go ahead and call up that slide. All right. Again, my name is JJ Conway, and I love, love, love this program. It was designed by diversity and inclusion expert Josh Rich. And what you're getting today is a taste of a customizable, compliant corporate training that I'll save a few minutes to talk about at the end. But first, we're going to talk about the roles of the PCI HO model. PCI HO, what on earth is that? Okay, that is the roles that we play in our organizations. We might play the role of a pioneer. We might play the role of champions. We might play the role of influencers. We might play the role of hesitators. I was a scientist in the Air Force for 23 years. We are really good hesitators to have on your team. All right. And sometimes we might play the role of obstructors. And I think when we're talking about change in an organization, like your organization, really what we're talking about, cultural change. We're talking about changing the culture, which is really the group habits of the people in the organization. Okay. And so what this requires is kind of talking about the change of each individual. And when we have changes in an organization, then the people tend to fit into one of these 5 roles that we're going to cover. So let's take another look at these roles. We're going to dig into these roles here for a little bit. We've got the pioneer, the champion, the influencer, the hesitator, and the obstructor. Okay. And I think it's interesting as we look at this, typically, you're usually going to have like one pioneer. Okay. This is the person who's bringing the idea forward in the organization. And what's interesting is the pioneer doesn't actually need to be a titled leader. You know, one of the things that we talk a lot about, especially in the John Maxwell courses that I offer, is that leadership is influence. Leadership isn't a title. You may be titled the leader, but you may not actually be the leader. And similarly, you may not have the title of leader, but you may have the respect of your peers and be able to influence your peers. And that makes you a leader. So a person who is the pioneer could be anyone that may have witnessed something that spawned this desire to bring diversity inclusion program into the organization, or someone who has, watched it on the news or had it in their awareness. And so as we go through this model and identifying the roles, you'll notice that there's going to be, just by nature, there's going to be more influencers and there's going to be more hesitators as well. All right. So, but I think the important thing here is to recognize this is not an exercise of gotcha. This is an exercise of awareness. Okay. What we're hoping as we walk through this for the next couple of minutes to set the intro stage is that we're going to expand your awareness of the role that you play in your organization as it relates to diversity and inclusion. Everybody plays a role. Even the obstructor. I know that has a negative connotation in our society today, but someone who is considered an obstructor still brings value and protection to an organization. They may feel like an obstructor, but they're trying to protect the organization. And we want to appreciate that in our discussion today. And as we talk about influencers and hesitators, again, that's where the majority of the people are going to find themselves. And so for those that might be or would be a pioneer, it's really important for you to note that the influencers and hesitators are looking to you for leadership. Now, each one of these roles sees their purpose in a slightly different way. So let's look at this for each of the roles. I've got up here that the pioneer, they tend to see their role. Their purpose is to create and cast a vision for change. Whereas the champions They see their purpose as supporting that vision and supporting that plan for change to the pioneer. The influencers tend to see their purpose as carrying the message to the community. So lighting other candles with their light. Oh, I love that illustration. They're lighting other candles with their light. Hesitators tend to see their purpose as, well, hesitating, waiting and seeing and watching from a safe distance. Like I said earlier, as a scientist in the Air Force for 23 years, you would find that many scientists end up in that hesitator category. And it's really designed to help keep, like the obstructor, the organization safe. And it's not necessarily out of a lack of concern for all people. It's a desire of concern for the organization. Okay. And so you find then also the obstructors in an organization who do see themselves to be obstructive to change, but we want to understand that most of the reason why an obstructor is choosing that is because they don't see the purpose to the change. They may lack the purpose to the change, or they're concerned that the purpose to the change may not be as hunky-dory as everybody's trying to make it. All right. So if you find yourself resistant to these concepts, and I don't know that you would necessarily be on my channel watching this if you were resistant to this, but if I was to bring this into your organization, you might find that people are being resistant to the training. We might want to think about what the purpose is and how we can make it a significant positive change within the organization. So as we move from what the purpose of being in one of these roles might be, we can also look at what motivates us in that purpose. So before I do that, let me just ask you a question. Just think of an organization in which you are playing a role right now, and think about these 5 roles and just kind of think about which one are you. So maybe it's your church that you're working with and some change is being implemented, or maybe you're in a other volunteer organization, or maybe they're trying to change things at work. Think about whatever the change is. And today we're talking about diversity and inclusion, but maybe that's not the change you're facing at work. Think about what the change is, and then think about your role as we slip through these topics, okay? Which one would you self-identify with? All right. Now let's talk about the motivations. So a pioneer is motivated, generally speaking, by bringing out the best. A champion is motivated by being on a winning team. And come on, let's face it, who doesn't want to be part of a winning team, right? An influencer is motivated by moving people to action. Most influencers, honestly, they're peacemakers. They are unifiers within the organization. The hesitator is motivated by the status quo, not rocking the boat. I remember when I first joined the Air Force, I was this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed lieutenant, and I had all these ideas. I had grown up an Air Force brat, and I just knew I was going to change the world. And I had all these thoughts and ideas. And then I met the butterbar brick wall. Okay. I discovered that nobody wanted to hear my ideas. Nobody wanted to accept my changes. Nobody wanted to improve processes. Nobody wanted to make things more efficient. Oh, I was so frustrated, right? Fast forward 10 years, and now I was a major in the Air Force. And one of my mentors was actually one of our bishops who had retired from the Air Force at the same time that I joined the Air Force. He said, well, congratulations on your promotion. I understand things are going well in your career. Let me ask you something. Do you understand now why nobody listened to you when you were a lieutenant? And I was like, yes. So sometimes, it's not that people are trying to hinder progress when they want to keep the status quo. It's just they're tired of everything changing for no good reason. And they want to make sure that if you are going to change something, that it's actually the right thing to change, not just a knee-jerk reaction, and not just because somebody wants a star on their performance eval, a bullet on their OPR so they can get promoted. Okay. Now, we find a very interesting motivation for the For the obstructor, which is really being motivated by a fear of change, the unknown, and being wrong. Oh, they do not want to be wrong. Scientists tend to fall in this category a lot too, because we tend to be analytical and we want to do all the research and make sure that we're right. And some of us have learned how to move past that need to be 100% right as we ascend into leadership, because we understand that leadership goes on a faster pace than being able to assimilate all the data and be 100% right about your decisions. But I still value people who have the mindset that I'm going to do the thorough analysis. I appreciate them because they do the analysis, so I don't have to do so much analysis. Okay, maybe that's a little too much. But we want the point that I'm trying to get across is it takes all kinds of personalities to make a functioning organization, and we want to value the contribution that everybody makes. Regardless of where somebody falls on this chart, they can still be treated with dignity and respect, just the way we'd want to be treated when people disagree with us. Okay? How we identify is so important. And so let's look at that for each of these roles. You can see here that if you're the pioneer, you tend to identify as empowered, whereas the champions, they tend to identify as supportive. The influencers tend to identify as enthusiastic, whereas hesitators tend to see themselves as responsible, right? They tend to see themselves as responsible. Obstructors, they tend to identify as being right. And if they're insistent on being right, well, sometimes that puts you in a position where that makes everybody else wrong. And you can see for yourself how much of a difference that it makes. I mean, think about maybe you're a pioneer and you see yourself as empowered. What a difference from an obstructor at the bottom and how they see themselves being right. And then think about the spectrum here. If you are seeing yourself as an influencer, someone who's responsible for change but also wants to make the peace, what a difference that is for someone who sees themselves as a hesitator and thinks they're responsible for holding things up until the organization can do thorough analysis to help keep the organization safe. You see how all of these different things can play along each other, and how, more importantly, do you see how each of these identifications, purposes, and motivations can actually bring more clashes instead of more unity? So we want to bring more unity. One of the most powerful and empowering thoughts that anyone can have, as Wayne Dwyer pointed out, is that when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And it's so important for us that if we can change the way we see ourselves as it relates to diversity and inclusion, things not only change, but more importantly, it can become a game changer for the organizations. And this is really where the rubber meets the road, when you can see yourself as a key part of the solution. When we change the way we see ourselves, when we change the way we identify, that's the opening door for us to begin to make a change in our behavior. And of course, when we think of our behavior is being driven from belief. What holds our belief in place is often the framework of our self-talk. But you can see as we walk through this, it's not important just to know your self-belief and your framework, but to understand everybody else on the team and what they feel their purpose is and how they identify. Okay. So now let's take a look at this fourth column. A pioneer's self-talk might be, okay, this is wrong. How do I make this right? What can I do to lead? And of course, their behavior begins to be driven by that. Champions, their self-talk is more along the lines of, what can I do to help? How can I add value? And of course, that also shows up in their behavior. An influencer self-talk is, how can I spread the word? How can I take this to more people in the organization? How can you get others to join in? How can I take this further? What can I do to multiply the impact? Hesitators are asking themselves, is this safe? Is this safe for me? Is this safe for us as an organization? A lot of times they're like, let's wait and see. And we've seen that in their behavior. We've seen that so many times that somebody has this grandiose idea and it's just going to burn itself out. Now, come on. We know that that's kind of how a lot of things happen because of all the different motivations. And so we have to be very careful not to just dismiss the hesitator, but to honor and accept and work with the purposes, the motivations, and the behaviors. Remember what Wayne Dwyer said. So when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And as Takitha said here, things change. We're going to emphasize that, all right? And so we want to understand that this is the self-talk. Is this safe? Is this going to work for me? Let's wait and see. Don't stick your neck out. Don't make yourself the fall guy. Don't get yourself in trouble, okay? Stay safe. The obstructors, they will say things not only to themselves, but also to other people. And this is kind of like, you've heard this before. Here we go again. It's another program that's not going to work. Oh, this is such a waste of the organization's time and money. And they might even deny the problem. And you could see that present in their behavior. Okay. And so as we move to the last column, which is change-driven action, it starts the process of thinking about what actions we can take. Okay, so this now is where we shift to being about you, empowering to change. And that's the benefit of these questions that we're going to share. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. We'll start with the pioneer here. In terms of change-driven action, the pioneer, they want to clarify the vision. You got to clarify your vision and you got to make it safe for everyone to join you. Now, I will admit, it took me a long time to realize that my charge out in front pioneering self, oh, I thought I was doing all these great things and I thought I was going to implement all these changes, but I did not make it safe for people to join me. I didn't make it safe for people to see that this was the right path. I didn't make it safe for the influencers to see that they were going to be able to bring the peace and the harmony. These are things that I had to learn. And some of you have been trying to institute change for a very, very long time, and you haven't learned how to make it safe for others to come with you. Now, it's never going to be 100% safe, but you can do what you can to understand where they're coming from. That's all we can ask. All right. Want to clarify that vision so that people see where they're going, where you're trying to take them, and how it's going to be better for everybody. All right. Champions tend to bring that structure and organization, and they want to make things as inclusive as possible. And so for you as a champion, one of the things that you're good at is celebrating the incremental steps forward. You know, sometimes the pioneers get so caught up in the end goal, they don't think about celebrating the incremental goals. All right. And so you want to make sure that you have some champions there to celebrate and help keep the energy up. Okay. And so we want to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table. All right. This is so much fun. I hope y'all are having as much fun as I am. Influencers, I'm going to ask you to bring your voice alive. Be loud and proud and help the organization move with intention and purpose. I'm going to I'm going to ask you to help get out there and spread the word and encourage and influence as only you can to get others to join in. Hesitators, I'm going to ask you, what's one thing that you can do? What's one thing that you can do to move forward to what you think may be right? What is one thing you can do to move forward to test and see about the safety rather than wait and see? And can you risk getting it wrong? Can you risk not being 100% right? You know, this is a big one. This is a big question for a lot of people today because we don't want to be wrong. We're in a society, everybody preaches tolerance. Everybody says we love it. But, you know, a lot of times it's a one mistake Air Force. It's a one mistake corporation. It's a one mistake church, and you're branded for life. It's a one mistake culture. No matter how much we say, march to the beat of your own drummer, no matter how much we say, be tolerant and accepting and loving, we still have those societal and cultural fears hanging in our subconscious. And I'm just going to encourage you. If you're in a situation where you've fallen into the role of hesitator, or you feel that that's the best role to help keep your organization safe, I'm going to ask you to just look for an area where you can take one step that you're not keeping it safe and that you're willing to take the risk of possibly maybe being a little wrong. For our obstructors today, I'm going to ask if you can be open-minded to a new idea and seek understanding. I'm going to ask you to declare noble intent, which means that you're going to assume, you're going to declare, you're going to proclaim that the other person bringing these ideas to you, they're not malicious, they're not trying to harm you, they really do mean the best. Now, they may not know everything. They may be like the lieutenant talking to the major. They may be like I was when I started out my career, talking to those who'd been around for a while. They may not have all the understanding that they need. They may not have all of these things, but can you be open-minded to at least find out? Can you be open-minded to declare noble intent that they really do mean well? And then find out if there's a there. Find out if they have enough understanding. Give it a chance. And then if you just can't be for it, well, maybe if it's, maybe just don't be against it, especially when it comes to diversity and inclusion. Okay. So I think as we go through this entire framework and model, it's really about asking yourself these questions. And it's really about kind of identifying, where do you self-identify? Where do you fall in all of this? And then what's the role that you're playing in your organization? Remember I asked you at the beginning to think about an organization. This is a training that I take into corporations, but think about an organization that you're in right now. Where do you fall in that organization? What role are you playing? Can you take some steps forward? I'm not asking everybody to be on board with every change that comes along, but I am asking you to give it a chance. I'm asking you to declare noble intent and just see, be open. Ask yourself, what's your purpose? Ask yourself, what's the purpose for even watching me today? Or if you're to bring me into your organization, or if someone else brings me into your organization, what's the purpose? What's the goal? What do you want the outcome to be? James Allen said that until our thought is linked with purpose, there's no true intelligent accomplishment. There's no true creation of something new. I want you to ask yourself today, what is motivating your behavior? What is the belief system that's driving you as you look at the identifiers? Could you take one of those action steps in unity? You notice that all of the roles had an action step to take, not just those who might have a more negative connotation. Because you can be a pioneer and you can go off and try to create change, and you can actually create so much hesitation and obstruction by not bringing everybody along that the organization ends up worse for all of your hard work and all of your passion. It's so important to understand where your beliefs and self-talk are leading you. And it's so important to ask yourself, could I take an action step? Could I look at how I identify myself? And could I find one thing that I can do to move this organization forward? This goal has to be to the common good of all of us, because united we stand and divided we fall. I want to encourage you, that you're here, you're watching this, because you know that not one of us can get the job better done than all of us working together. And it's in that spirit of working together to implement diversity and inclusion in our organizations in a way that brings sustained change, improved processes, higher profits, greater productivity, and greater personal satisfaction and empowerment for all of the employees. That is the goal that we have today. So I want to encourage you as we go and close out this session that this is just a piece. This is just a piece of what we do and our another seat at the table, diversity and inclusion training. And if you want more, if you want to bring this training to your organization, I want you to text ASAT for another seat at the table to 254 274 3055. This training, the full training that goes along with this, is customizable from a lunch and learn to a half day to a full day format. And we even have ongoing education products. Let me say that again. We even have ongoing education weekly products. Okay. So we have something that's customizable for every budget and every size organization. Well, I think we have just had a fantastic morning. And I want to thank you for being a part of my Juneteenth celebration. You know, all of our comments and our fantastic panelists, Miss Sabrina Lowry was fantastic. I hope those of you who are on Clubhouse enjoyed what you heard. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if you missed the beginning, you're going to want to go ahead and upgrade your experience so that you can go back and get the recording and you can hear about the generational wealth building and especially the fantastic and spirited discussion on generational land ownership. That is all I have for you today. I am going to check my comments one last time and just make sure if we have any questions, now would be the time to ask them. If anybody on Clubhouse has a question, now would be the time to unmute yourself and ask the question. I'm still learning how to use Clubhouse, so I'm trying to unmute people, but I guess you have to do that yourself. Okay, so if there are no questions, we're going to go ahead and close out. But again, I want to thank everybody for participating. I want to thank you for being a part of this. This holiday is a very special holiday to me and so many of people who fought the fight that I have and fought the struggle that I have. You know, as the first African American to serve as a physicist in the Air Force, and even being told that I couldn't originally declare my major because they were convinced, the physics department at the Air Force Academy, they said blacks can't do physics. And it was such a phenomenal paradigm shift when I declared physics anyway and graduated as president of the physics club and went on to be the number 5 physics graduate that year and got the last seat for a full ride scholarship to go get my master's in nuclear engineer and continue to break paradigms my entire career. For people like me who understand the impact of the legacy of Juneteenth and the culture surrounding why we even have this holiday in the first place, it's so powerful to me that you were able to spend this time talking about these issues that should lead our children and our children's children to greater success. I'm JJ Conway. Thanks for being here with us today. Y'all take care and be blessed.